I'm clicking live now.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The time is exactly 2 o'clock, I think. Is that right, Julie? Is it 2 o'clock, ready to start?
Ready to start.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Welcome to the meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. I just take this opportunity to wish everyone a healthy and safe and happy new year. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public are able to hear and view the papers displayed during the broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any member experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the telephone number previously provided. Councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. And can I just add, I did just say before we went on camera, because of the bad weather, if anybody's experiencing difficulty, perhaps if they shut down the video function, and then you should be able to hear a lot better. Thank you. So, councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. As chair, I will interpret the council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any interests. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee, portfolio holders and other members or officers, to introduce themselves before they speak. We've had apologies from Councillor Hannah Fraser, and Councillor David Vasma is substituting for her. I don't believe there are any other apologies other than I have an apology from the portfolio holder for Culture, Leisure and Waste, Leslie Picton. She's taken her mum for a COVID jab, so I think I wish them all the best with that. So have we got anybody else, any other apologies, Amanda?
I'm not aware of any apologies from committee members. The portfolio holder for Highways and Transport is not able to attend the meeting as we hoped. Yes,
okay, so I will I'll pick that one up then. Thank you. So members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any of the matters to be discussed which are not included in the register of interests, and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I'm now going to read out each committee member's name and ask them to confirm their presence and if they have any interests. My name's Claire Wild, I'm chair of the committee, and I confirm I have no interests. Joyce Barrow.
Confirmed and no interest.
Thank you. Karen Calder.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Roger Evans.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Alan Mosley.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Thank you. Cecilia Motley.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Thank you. Peggy Mullock.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Dave Tremelin.
I think he may be having issues accessing. We're trying to help him at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And Leslie Winwood.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Right, okay, so he's here. He's marked down as apologising on the thing. And Councillor David Vasma.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
And can I just go back a little bit to apologies? Councillor Peter Nutting is unable to attend, and he sends his apologies for today. Okay, thank you very much. So for your information, the following non-members of the committee have asked to attend the meeting and have indicated they may wish to speak. Those members are Gwen Burgess, Julian Dean, Michael Wood and David Turner. Okay, so Item number 3, the minutes. The minutes of the last 2 meetings of the committee will be presented at the meeting scheduled for the 17th of March 2021. In the meantime, the recordings of these meetings are available on the web pages. Okay, and this is due entirely to a capacity issue within the team. And if anybody has any questions about that, if they ask me when the meeting's finished, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So item number 4 is public questions. So 2 petitions have been received, one from a Mr. Nick Saxby with regard to Whitchurch Swimming Centre, and one from Mr. Bernie Bentic with regard to Meal Brace. So if we take the petition from Mr. Saxby, a petition bearing over 400 signatures has been received from Nick Saxby requiring a debate under the council's petition scheme. Okay, so this petition urges Shropshire Council to commit to making Whitchurch Swimming Centre usable, work with contractors and partners to develop solutions for adapting the centre for social distancing, and engage with the community on the obstacles to open the pool. So I'm now going to call on our committee officer, Daniel Webb, to read out Mr. Saxby's written submission.
Hello there, thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is Daniel Webb here, Overview Scrutiny Officer here at Shropshire Council, and here is Mr. Saxby's submission. I'm writing to you to submit a petition on behalf of the people of Whitchurch regarding the operation of the town's public swimming centre to the Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As you may be aware, Whitchurch Swimming Centre has been closed since March, when the first lockdown of the COVID-19 pandemic took effect. Other leisure facilities in Shropshire have since been adapted and made usable again and have opened to the public. Whitchurch's pool remains closed, with no immediate plans to reopen. The building in which the pool is housed has been determined to be non-compliant with social distancing measures, and as such, it is reasonable to close it in order to safeguard public health. However, we are now 9 months later and seemingly no progress at all has been made. I have previously written to Shropshire Council's Cabinet, and Councillor Picton has responded by restating the impossibility. More recently, Whitchurch's councillors have also affirmed the impossibility of opening the facility. Unfortunately, so far, we haven't heard anything about the technical reasons why the facility is not able to accommodate social distancing. I've asked which options have been explored for adapting the site and explanations as to why these are not actionable, but I haven't received any technical detail. To that end, myself and 439 and counting residents of Whitchurch are now petitioning the council to engage with our community and commit to proactively seeking solutions rather than simply waiting for social distancing measures to end. This petition urges Shropshire Council to commit to making Whitchurch Swimming Centre usable, to work with contractors and partners to develop solutions for adapting the centre for social distancing, and to engage with the community on the obstacles to opening the pool. The petition also contains submissions of signatories' ideas and suggestions for ways in which to manage the facility. Amidst general comments, I trust that the community's input will be given consideration. As our petition has gathered more than 200 signatures, I believe that a senior officer should give evidence to the committee on this matter. I believe that this evidence could consist of a technical report on exactly what the issues are with the building, what options have been examined, and what explanations for why those options have been deemed undeliverable. I hope that with proper scrutiny of these details, either opportunities will arise to troubleshoot and problem solve for adapting the facilities, or the people of Whitchurch will be given some justification for why their swimming facilities are unusable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I propose now to read out the reply from the portfolio holder. We completely understand the frustrations of the local community and we are unable to reopen the swimming pool prior to the latest that we were unable to open the centre prior to this latest lockdown. We are frustrated too, as we understand the importance to the users of the facility with regards to both physical and mental health. The operators of the facility, Shropshire Community Leisure Trust, undertook detailed risk assessments in accordance with all government guidance on social distancing for indoor sports facilities related to the corona pandemic. Unfortunately, the size and layout of the centre does not permit suitable one-way systems and does not allow customers to maintain 2-metre distancing in key parts of the building, including the reception, corridors and spectator areas. Additionally, the changing rooms are only permitted to hold a maximum of 4 people and does not allow the introduction of adequate people flow systems. The findings from the risk assessments have been challenged by local members and council officers, and all parties agreed that for reasons outlined, the operator was unable to provide a COVID-19 safe environment for customers, staff and the community. With the vaccination programme progressing, we may soon see lockdown rules easing and consequently social distancing guidelines being relaxed. Until then, however, we are not able to reopen the swimming centre. Note, all leisure facilities at the present time are closed. The council fully intend for the centre to be able to reopen as soon as rules change, and for this to happen, property services officers have been investigating the cause of the water leak from the pool's circulation system. This became more apparent during the first lockdown, whilst the swimming pool was out of action for several weeks. Having followed a process of elimination, a specialist pools contractor has been commissioned to undertake further detailed investigatory work to ascertain the cause of the leak and consider the extent of the work required to rectify this. The council have set aside a considerable amount from the corporate repairs and maintenance revenue budget to address this, highlighting our desire to see the swimming centre back in action as soon as possible. Along with our partner operators, we will continue to review any updated guidance provided by the government with regard to COVID-19 safe environments, and hopefully we will move to a more relaxed situation in the not too distant future. We will also continue to progress with the essential investigations and maintenance work to address the other issues that would prevent reopening. So that's a statement from the portfolio holder. I've got the local member Peggy Mullock who wishes to speak. Peggy, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Peggy Mullock, and I represent Whitchurch North. As you heard in Councillor Picton's report, I talked to her often about ways that we could open our baths safely. However, under the COVID guidelines from the government, it was just not safe to do so. On a recent visit from the reassurance team, Whitchurch retailers and members of the public were praised for the way that they were working to stop the spread of the virus. The shops were limiting numbers and people were wearing masks and keeping their distance. As you can see, the town is well on board with keeping safe. The problem at the baths, as she stated, is that the reception area, the changing rooms and the passageways are just too small to keep staff and public safe. It is just not feasible. We have seen recently the highest amount of deaths from COVID, and I would not want to do anything to put lives in my town at risk. Hopefully, as the vaccines are administered and cases reduce, life will get back to normal and swimming can once again be available to our residents. I would like to thank Councillor Picton for all her efforts to get our baths open, and as I have an interest, I have great-grandchildren, 3 of them waiting to start swimming lessons. Residents can be well assured that I'll be following this issue very, very carefully and getting our baths open as soon as we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Peggy. I've got Joyce Barrow who wishes to speak next. Joyce, would you like to?
I would, thank you. Speaking as an ex-swimming coach, swimming teacher, and someone who has been to Whitchurch Pool on several occasions. I've been to county swimming galas there. I know this venue probably better than most people who don't live in Whitchurch. I think it would be totally wrong to even think about doing anything there at the moment. As you walk through the front doors, it's probably about a metre to the reception desk, I would guess. It's impossible to pass anyone between the reception area and going on to poolside. The poolside area itself, normally if there are spectators, they sit along the poolside on the edge and usually get very wet, I hasten to add. How would you ventilate? You couldn't possibly ventilate it because you have to keep the pool area and you have to keep the other areas at a certain temperature. Mr. Saxby agrees, actually, doesn't he, in what he says, that it's impossible to socially distance. I absolutely agree with him. And I think from that aspect, it's obvious what the technical issues are in trying to reopen it. I'm surprised that we've never actually looked at Whitchurch Pool. It's a very old pool, and I'd be interested in the future at some point to see the condition of the building and the actual pool itself. A report would be welcomed, obviously not now while the council is very busy, but I'm wondering, you know, there might come a point where you have to look at perhaps building a new swimming pool. I know that's not for now, but I think sometime in the future. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Joyce. Roger, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask some questions of officers. Are there anybody here who can answer any questions, please? Because we are a scrutiny committee, and surely somebody should be here to answer any questions which arise, and I've got a few.
I can try, Chair. It's Mark Barrow, Executive Director of the place.
Well, has investigation been carried out about, because this pool, I presume we will be paying compensation to the operators because they are closed. We may be claiming it back from government during the COVID restrictions, but when it's open when all the other pools are open, I presume the council will have to pay that money. So it's costing money, and the public taxpayer, be it government or local, for it. Has any investigation been carried out of putting something like a marquee up outside and then put in traffic lights similar to some supermarkets so that people can go enter and exit safely and still maintain their distances? So has that been looked at or thought about, please?
I'm not sure if the notion of a marquee, Councillor Evans, has been looked at, but certainly the building has been looked at on a number of occasions, both by public health colleagues as well as our own health and safety people, and that determination that the configuration of the building just doesn't enable it to be occupied and social distancing be complied with. However, I think the hope is that as the measures kind of start to relax, we can get it open as soon as we can. It's a difficult one in a range of ways, and it's interesting that the leak that's referred to has come to light, you know, particularly through this process. But, you know, I think there's a commitment, put it like this, that to try and get it open as soon as we can, within all of the confines of you know, the ability to do it safely. It's a difficult one in terms of, I don't know if you know the context around it, but it's not easy as the back of the building faces onto a car park as well. So, you know, the ability to control the site in a security sense is another question for the operator too, if you're to have different, you know, openings at one end of the building to another.
But if we use the main entrance and have a marquee up, similar to many recreation establishments have put a marquee up because they haven't got the room inside, we could do that, put heating in, because the way I understand it is that the restrictions of some sort will stay in place until everybody has their second jab, which would be late summer, which would be 18 months. The community there obviously value their swimming pool want to use it, surely we should be investigating methods so that it can be, the reception area could be safely traversed and maintain the social distancing.
Yeah, if I can, Chair, just to respond to that, I should have declared that as a resident of Whitchurch and a user of the pool, I'm really keen to get it back open. You know, I don't say that flippantly, Roger, I genuinely mean that. So I am pushing people to come up with solutions. We will continue to look at if there's anything that can be done safely. And I think the commitment to everybody in Whitchurch is we're going to try and get the pool open as soon as we can. There is that technical issue about the leak, but if we can manage that in the meantime to keep some provision going, let's make sure we exhaust all possibilities. So I'll take that away, Chairman, and we'll give you an update at a later date if that's okay.
If I can come back, Chairman, I saw a report of that leak was present and known about some months ago. Have we repaired it, or is repairs going to be carried out? And what is the cost of keeping the pool closed to the council and government taxpayer, please?
If I can then, Chair, to come back on that. Yes, surveys have been done in terms of trying to track down where the leak is. It turns out that it's actually within some pipe work that is within the concrete structure. So something's fractured within the kind of retaining structure for the pool. So, and that's just kind of leaking away. So there is, you know, some options being looked at, you know, temporarily what could be done about that. So the other bit then in terms of how we can, if you like, bring it back economically. All I can say, Councillor Evans, is that you know, we're looking at all the options. If I can get back to you with an update on potential costs and timings, we can maybe circulate that as soon as I can following the meeting, Chairman.
Please, Chairman, can that action be put in place and minuted? Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just say that the local members, Peggy and Tom and Gerald, have been working very hard with the portfolio holder on this. Right, I have Cecilia Motley wants to speak. Cecilia.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, it's obviously extremely inconvenient for people when facilities like this have to close. But I don't think I can recall, and I am no spring chicken, I can assure you, I don't think I can recall a time when such a virulent pandemic has descended upon this country, which actually ever required people to remain 2 meters away from each other at all times. So I do think we have to acknowledge the fact that we are at the moment in a unique set of circumstances, which I don't think has hit Whitchurch or anywhere else come to that before. Therefore, it doesn't sound to me as though this is a building which can easily expand itself in order to accommodate the necessary social distancing, and it is so important, particularly in a swimming context, and the need for good ventilation as well, to ensure that people who are swimming are absolutely safe. If you're not satisfied that they're safe, then I'm afraid you shouldn't use the facility. I think it's also worth pointing out that whilst a marquee on the front of the building might be a jolly good idea for those going in and out, it doesn't actually deal with the problem which was eloquently described by Joyce once you get into the poolside area, and the fact that there are a limited number of changing rooms, and I would doubt that they were well socially distanced either. So yes, this is a very inconvenient situation for a lot of people, but just to reiterate, we are in completely unprecedented times at the moment, and we have to deal with them as we can. So it is also just worth saying that the council inherited, I suspect that the Whitchurch baths were inherited by Shropshire Council, that they certainly haven't been built since Shropshire Council was formed. And a lot of these facilities were set up because there was a big demand for them, but they weren't very large. And I think this is probably one of those, which is why I say that it sounds as though it's on a constricted site, and that actually trying to expand the facilities there would be quite difficult. So it is an unfortunate situation, and I do feel sorry for people in Whitchurch who can't access the swimming pool, but as I said before, we are in unprecedented times here.
Thank you, Cecilia. Joyce, did you want to just have a quick word, come back?
Yes, very quickly. I think if Roger had read the paper, it does say that it can only accommodate socially distancing for people in the changing room. So, I mean, that would be totally unviable. But I would like to know if Councillor Evans has ever been to the pool, because the idea of a marquee outside, it doesn't solve any problems whatsoever. In fact, it probably creates problems. And I would imagine if this pool takes quite some time to open and other pools open before it, for example, Market Drayton, etc. At the moment, across the county, you have schools who bus children into swimming lessons. I assume that that might be a short-term solution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joyce. Roger, you wanted to come back really quickly. I'm not sure how we are for time.
Thank you, Chairman. You can have changing rooms inside the marquee. We can do all sorts if there is an effort to be put in. I'm asking, has it been investigated? And I'm being told, no, it hasn't really been investigated. That's what I'm asking about. Has that been looked at? Is it possible? Or just saying, no, it can't happen? Easiest thing in the world is to say no. Let's see how we can make it happen. That's a lot harder, and that's why looking at the cost benefit, wondering how much we're paying to the operators now, and we're getting no income from it anywhere, whether it's coming from us or government, whichever. So that's the cost benefit, as well as the mental health and the people locally be able to use it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Roger. Dave, do you want to come in quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, one thing no one's mentioned is the safety of staff. I mean, we've got an outdoor swimming pool here at Highley, which is very heavily used, but you cannot guarantee the safety of staff, particularly lifeguards. Think about it. If they do have to dive in and try and drag somebody out, it's no, it's not a prospect I relish, to be perfectly honest with you. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think how are we on time, Amanda? I think if we had the 15 minutes for the debate.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and if I just round up by saying, you know, we are in unprecedented times. Unfortunately, 1,600 people died yesterday. I mean, we've got to be so careful that we keep all the users safe and also the staff as well. And it's my understanding that you can only fit 3 people, I think, in the centre and be safe, which clearly isn't ideal. But I think praise should be given to the local members, Peggy, Tom and Gerald, for all their hard work and all the meetings they've had to try and move this forward. So and also for the excellent piece that Peggy wrote in the Whitchurch Herald. If anybody wants to see that, I can send them a link. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything with this petition now. I think we've listened, and
Chairman, it's Councillor Roger Evans again. The information that I asked for and was offered by the director, can we just note that that is awaited and will be circulated when received?
Yes, of course you will be aware, Roger, that in all these circumstances, and I'm sure you'd insist on it yourself, there is a member protocol. So it will obviously be circulated to the local members first, and I would expect that. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to, let me just see. Okay, we're going to move on now to the petition from Mr. Bentic. A petition bearing over 400 signatures has been received from Bernie Bentic, requesting a debate under the council's petition scheme. The petition requests Shropshire Council to commission an in-depth review of the traffic, cycling and pedestrian problems in the Meal area, and to publish and implement comprehensive and practical solutions. So Mr. Bendick's written submission will be read out by the Scrutiny Officer, Daniel Webb. Are you there, Daniel?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you very much. Bear with me a moment. Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. Good afternoon. I've lived in Shrewsbury for 30 years and in Mayle Brace for over 6 years. During that time, I've seen traffic using 3 arterial roads in the area increase astronomically. Many residents have remarked to me that they now feel unsafe walking along our roads, and they are very fearful for the safety of their children when out walking and cycling. The 1931 census results show that there were 2,252 residents living in the area. This doubled to 4,375 according to the 2011 census. The number of dwellings had increased from 590 to 1,780, an increase of 300%. There remain, however, just 3 arterial roads feeding this increasing population. These 3 arterial roads are also used by many non-residents as rat runs due to new housing developments. There are 3 main schools attended by around 2,400 students, shortly to be 2,600. Many consider that pollution is high in the vicinity, but at present there are no monitoring stations near the schools. Other papers have been submitted, including letters from the 2 secondary schools, and I give 2 short quotes from them. Quote 1. It is not uncommon for cars to mount the pavement in order to try to keep clear what is already a heavily congested road at peak hours, encroaching on pedestrian and cycling routes. We have been that lucky there has not been an accident so far. We have to field numerous complaints from local residents having to walk very close to cyclists, and these could be avoided if these changes were made. As a result of my concerns, those expressed by others, I drew up a petition, and this is presented to you here today. In all, there are 33 areas of concern shown on a map supplied to officers. According to Crash Map UK, there have been around 100 collisions in the Mayle area over the last 10 years, with 14 involving children. 3 of the collisions resulted in serious injuries. The petition has been signed by over 400 residents. With increasing concerns, the decision was taken to submit this in November 2020 and not wait for the 1,000 signatures that will be needed to take it to a full council meeting. A list of requests that we, the residents of Mayle Brace, and both the heads of the 2 secondary schools want has been supplied to officers and include immediate implementation of the following. A blanket 20-mile-an-hour speed limit for the area with ANPR cameras. Designation of the area as a low traffic neighbourhood. Dedicated cycle lanes. Bus services to and around the area to be subjected to a comprehensive review. Through traffic to be stopped. The School Streets Initiative to be implemented outside all 3 local schools with air pollution monitors, meanwhile, if any delay. A report of the traffic, cycling and pedestrian issues in Mayle with publication and implementation of comprehensive and practical solutions. I have supplied references regarding all of the above. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you are muted at the moment. Are you able to unmute, Chair?
Sorry, Amanda, slight technical issue there. Okay, so I'm going to read out the response from the portfolio holder. This is in response to the petition regarding road safety concerns in the Mayle Brace Longdon area. Shropshire Council have been working with the local member, Gwen Burgess, extensively. I further understand that the Residents Association are working closely with the local member, Gwen Burgess, and Gwen is also working closely with the schools. As part of her work, she has looked at the reported personal injury accident data for the area in question for the last 3 years. And the data identified says that there have been no fatal accidents, 3 serious accidents, and 10 slight accidents, all of which have been investigated. Through our annual process for reviewing accident data, the area around the junction of Longdon Road and Roman Road has been identified for further investigation and design work. Due to potential future changes in traffic flows and the presence of non-standard cycle facilities at this location, Shropshire Council's traffic team has recommended that consideration is given to opportunities for optimising provision for cycling in line with the Department for Transport's recently issued guidance on cycle infrastructure design, Local Transport Note 1/20. This work was due to be completed by the end of March 2021. However, it has been necessary to delay the work as planned surveys can now not take place due to the current lockdown and the absence of school pupils, which will have a significant impact on the validity of the data collected. This work will be progressed at the earliest opportunity. It also should be noted we are moving forward with developing a programme of works for delivering 20-mile-an-hour speed restrictions, school streets where appropriate, outside of all applicable Shropshire Council schools. Noting there is an existing 20-mile-an-hour provision for the schools on Longdon Road, this has been established for some time and regular traffic speed cameras are deployed in this area. References to where lines and other road markings and signs could be improved will be subject to routine highways inspections and work arranged if required. Certainly Gwen or in conjunction with the Residents Association can raise this with the appropriate officers. With regard to cars being parked on the pavement, Shropshire Council has recently responded to a national consultation led by the Department of Transport on pavement parking. Shropshire's position was that we wish to receive powers for civil enforcement for obstructing pavements. We await the DFT's response on specific powers following the Council's detailed response to the national consultation. Regarding the more significant interventions you refer to, the proposals of the Big Town Plan and the Big Town Plan Festival capture an ambition to work towards as we progress that agenda and are developing work on local transport plans for more sustainable and active travel, and bringing forward park and ride over time will assist in contributing towards the issues you raised, while balancing wider current responsibilities on social distancing work and delivery of other county schemes and accident prevention. The local member, Gwen Burgess, has been actively involved in all aspects, and a meeting with her and the local Residents Association would have been a good starting point for you. Additionally, considering bringing forward schemes via your local place plan officer to ensure the schemes are identified and included in the place plan for support as opportunities allow would be ideal. And again, if you need advice, then I'm sure that the local member, Gwen Burgess, will be able to assist on that. So that's me. And at this juncture, I'm going to ask Gwen, as the local member, to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Gwen Burgess, councillor for the Meal area, Meal Ward. I agree that the traffic is an ever-increasing problem in Meal, and at the request of the Meal Village Residents Association, I requested back in November last year to Steve Davenport, portfolio holder for highways, for a review. And since I was elected in August 9th, 2019, I've been working on several traffic and road safety issues and have had lots of ongoing discussions with highways and officers and various other interested parties.
including Shrewsbury Town Football Club. We've been having meetings regarding the ongoing problem of matchday parking. I've had meetings with Becky Thomas, who's the West Mercia local police sergeant for the Safer Roads team, and we have worked together on improving the road signage so it's enforceable on the one-way system through the centre of the village. The Church Road area, I actually met Steve Davenport there, and we had a meeting about that, because it's not only just what's happening to the play areas there, but also the state of the highway and going on leading round to the primary school there. That's going to be the subject of a finance public consultation, and that will be happening this year. I've also recently met with the two head teachers at Priory School and Meal School, because there was sadly an accident there recently, and we discussed various options, and I'm pleased that £10,000 has been allocated for a cycle path from the south of Mill School. I've been looking at the pedestrian crossing in that area, and also discussing with Shrewsbury Town Council the possibility of a cycle path on the inside of Priory School, which will help that area too. There are lots of other works that are going on, and I'm aware that Mill Village Residents Association have also been doing a lot of work in this area over the years. I received an email from Mill Village Residents Association about today's meeting, and if that's okay, I'd like to read that out. We, the Mill Village Residents Association, understand that a petition is being presented to Council on the 20th of January. The MVRA were not communicated to with regards to the petition, which was initiated on a Liberal Democrat communication to residents in Mill Ward. We have received further messages from the MVRA team, and they would like the person presenting the petition on Wednesday to Council to be challenged by yourselves with regard to the actual proposals he has sent to the Council. We understand that those who signed the petition were aware of only one general statement asking for a survey, which we already had in hand. The details of his proposals have not been made public, so those signatures must be invalid, as they did not know the detail, and we doubt that some would have signed if they had known, as many households will be greatly detrimentally affected by some proposals. For example, besides other items, a confused one-way system, wide cycle lanes and restricted parking, besides encouraging more traffic through the village if there was a junction joining the A5 with Longdon Road. We are also concerned about who signed this petition. We wonder if all signatures were those of Mill Village residents or of Mill area, or did they come from further afield and would not be affected by the actual proposals. We, the MVRA, have worked hard ensuring we represent the views of residents to Council, and have done this by holding public meetings, inviting Council officers to come and hear what they have to say and their issues, which in fact have not changed much but just got worse. We in MVRA look forward to working with the Council with regards to the consultation already organised by Councillor Burgess with the Council's Highways Department in November 2020, so making this petition irrelevant. I think what they are concerned about is that the original petition, the question was quite straightforward, requesting a survey into the traffic issues in Mill, which I think we'd all agree with. I mean, it's good to look at these issues. It's an ongoing problem, and we are doing a lot of work in lots of different areas with that. But what's actually come to Council today includes requests for school streets to be initiated immediately, and a blanket 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, things across the whole village that perhaps people didn't actually sign the petition for. But I look forward to working with Highways more on these different issues, and I'm confident that we will get a lot of these issues and matters resolved, and we're working very hard to make these things happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification, really, for people who are listening, when referred to the MVRA, that is the Mill Village Residents Association. So just for some clarity, because I know the council are terrible for using acronyms. Roger, you'd like to speak?
Yes, Chairman. I'm surprised at that speech. A member of the public has raised a petition, and a member of the public has no right. Council has prevented that person answering any of those statements that were made. I think it was wrong to make those sort of statements. A person can make whatever comments they want personally, but then to say that the person presented it is got incorrect information, has not supplied the council with correct information, it is incorrect, without that person now being given the opportunity to make any answer whatever to any of those accusations. I'm disappointed that that sort of speech is made by a Shropshire councillor against a member of the public who cannot answer them and is not present today. That is not democracy. That is not how things should be done. 400 residents here, which is all we've got in front of us, who are concerned about safety of their area, and whether they've agreed with everything there or not, they are concerned. To decry and negate this petition and say they've all wasted their time because things are happening already, and not permit any comment to come back is not acceptable. I would like to hear from officers what their thoughts are rather than a member. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Can I just say, actually, this whole thing could have been sorted out if the petitioner had actually gone to see Gwen and the Residents Association in the first place and arranged a meeting, and then, you know, we wouldn't be in this position now.
If I can, Chairman, how do you know the petitioner did not try and do that? The petitioner isn't here to defend and say they tried and failed. I don't know if the petitioner did or not, so one should not assume the petitioner didn't.
No, I'm only going, I had a conversation with Gwen this morning, and she said she spoke to the petitioner well before this petition was actually raised. But anyway, I think perhaps there's something they can sort out themselves. In the meantime, is Steve Brown here on the call? Did you want to ask him a specific question, Roger?
Yes, please. I'd like to ask the officer about this, about whether anything can be done, his thoughts on it, and the blanket 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. My sons went to Mealbrae School. My area abuts that area quite a lot, so I know some of the things, and I must confess, I've used a rabbit run to go through it. What's being done to stop the rabbit run, especially at peak times when there's lots of children walking around? What is Highways doing about it? Even the local member said there's been some local accidents in the area. Shropshire Council have put built outs on the main Longdon Road to try and slow the traffic down. They've taken out the solid white line down the centre of the road there, because I traverse that road quite often. But the actual village itself, because there is a new estate there built on Sweet Lake, and a lot of those residents access that via Meal Village, going backwards and forwards. So the traffic there is increasing. I'd like to hear from the officer exactly what their thoughts are and how they are going to sort this problem out. Thank you.
Okay, so if Steve, oh yeah, Alan, yes.
I just want, there's two things I wanted to say. One is, have we done any clarification about the addresses of the people that signed the petition to see whether they are actually local or whether they've been farmed from far and wide? The other thing is, we've now been going in this for 47 minutes, and it seems as though this petition is going to take an awful lot longer. I mean, I'm sure the officers can say they'll look into this. Gwen said it's been looked into. There is a time limit on these, and I wonder what your ruling on that time limit's going to be.
Yeah, okay, so you're right. There's 15 minutes for each petition. That's why I checked with Amanda before. I think we've got a couple of minutes left. Amanda, how many minutes have we got left on this?
Chair, if I may, I've just been keeping. There we go.
2 minutes. Okay, so if Steve Brown is here, very quickly, you want to say something, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I think just to pick up on the points, we'll obviously continue to work with Councillor Burgess and the residents group to see what issues we need to be done. We're bringing through a number of policies, which is the 20-mile-an-hour outside of schools, and we've got a work programme that was agreed in the full cabinet report to bring that full council report to bring that forward, and we will continue to talk to the schools and look at all the issues that we can. So we will continue that dialogue and look at those issues and respond to any concerns where we feel appropriate and justified on that basis.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you very much for all your hard work, and thank you, Gwen, for taking the time. I think hopefully it looks like all your hard work's going to pay off very soon. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on now to.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this, obviously, but is anyone aware of where the addresses of the people who signed the petitions are checked about their whereabouts?
Well, I think, Alan, it's one of those things. I think, it's silly season. And unfortunately, because of, staff issues, that I don't think people have had the time to check all the addresses. But I certainly think that it's something that perhaps we ought to do in the future, so that, we know exactly who signed.
Chair, if I may.
I'd just add to that the excellent Labour candidate in Neil Brace has not been engaged in any of this silly season stuff. Yeah, I know, and that's fair enough. But I do know that some people, have been engaged in things, and they've got their children all to sign up and everything,
Chairman, those are some hasty accusations are being made about children. If one looks at the petition. Chairman, if one looks at the petition, it was presented to officers in November. It was presented, which is 2 months away, and officers then needed time, as I understand it, I assume from what has been said, to check the signatures. So I presume the officers did do the due diligence that is expected of them.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about this at all, Roger. All I've said is I've attended meetings in the past when there've been issues about traffic problems, and people have stood up and said, well, we believe our children ought to be able to sign because they're affected by the problems as well. It was nothing to do with this petition at all. I wasn't saying anything about that. Okay, so we're going to move on now to item number 5, which is member questions. So David Basma, would you like to ask your question? Or yes, or do you just want me to note the questions and answers, or do you want to read it out?
No, I'd like to read the question out, really, because it's quite important.
Okay.
And there's two questions in actual fact. And shall I just read them both out, because they link together, so if that's okay?
Yeah. Okay.
I note the programme meeting with place scrutiny due to be held January has been cancelled at short notice and no alternative offered. The next meeting is due to not be held until March. The council meeting was to examine the annual reports of both KIA and WSP. The performance and quality of these services are controversial. I understand this is due to the absence of one particular officer. In the past, others have presented reports involving KIA and WSP, so why was it not possible in this case? Surely the absence of just one officer is not a reasonable reason for cancelling this meeting. Others must have been carrying out the duties involved and taking responsibility for decisions during the period covered by the annual report, so shouldn't they be knowledgeable about the operation of these contracts and able to answer members' questions? Secondly, not only are these continuing questions about the operation of KIA and WSP contracts, but very recently complaints have been made about the performance of highways when key roads have not been gritted during the cold weather. The council place overview meeting would have provided an opportunity in public for members to question what has gone wrong. The KIA and WSP contracts are now scheduled for scrutiny, not scrutiny until March the 2nd, which is far too late. Can the cancellation notice to the place overview committee on 28th of January be withdrawn, or at the very least be rearranged for the first week in February? If not, then the only conclusion to be drawn is that council leaders are using the illness of a senior officer to avoid scrutiny of a controversial service until the purdah period before the local elections, when officers are directed to avoid responding to requests which could be regarded as politically contentious.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. Joyce, do you want to read out?
Yes, please. I do think that Councillor Basma added something to his last question, but I'll give the answer to his question.
I noticed that. I thought that was a long paragraph.
Yes, taking a bit of a liberty, I think. Yeah. So question number 1, it is both unfortunate and regrettable that we have had to cancel the meeting. Recognising that these items form part of the committee's programme and our annual reviews, they are not deemed urgent. As Chair, I feel that it is vitally important that members hear from and are given the opportunity to question all relevant officers involved, but in particular the Senior Manager who leads this area of service. Given that he has been taken seriously ill and has been away from work, he has not had the opportunity to prepare the necessary reports, and his ability to attend is still in question. As he is central to driving service improvement, I also feel that the meeting would be compromised by his absence. In addition to that, I am also cognizant of the tremendous strain council services, including these, are under at the moment, and I felt it was not in the best interest of the council or our communities to divert other officers from providing essential frontline services. Accordingly, I've asked officers to prepare the agenda items for our next meeting on the 2nd of March 2021. I have also instructed the overview scrutiny officer to arrange a further meeting in late March so that we are able to complete our agreed work programme. Please be assured I am as keen as all other members to make sure that the service the council provides are as good as they can be, and they are given the appropriate overview and scrutiny our communities expect. I do believe the council taxpayers of Shropshire recognise the efforts going on by the council to maintain essential services at such a very difficult time for so many. The answer to number 2 question. Having made inquiries as the specific nature of the question in relation to gritting, I understand that it relates to a rural part of the county in the Stiperstones area. That is not part of the council's designated regular routes for gritting. Rather than focus on one local issue, I will recommend at the forthcoming Place Overview Committee meeting that the committee conduct a review of the council's winter maintenance policy as part of its work programme in 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joyce.
Can I just come back, Chair? Is that just quickly?
No, you're not. I'm afraid you're not allowed, David.
Sorry, Chairman. Supplementary questions are allowed.
Are they? Can I just check? Is that right, Graham? It's Graham White there.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. It's Graham White here from Legal and Democratic Services. Yes, a supplementary question is allowed at the scrutiny committee. Okay, thank you, Graham. Thanks for that qualification. Okay, David, have your supplementary then. Sorry.
Yeah, just quickly to say that.
Chairman, I think Councillor Vasmer is muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't. Sorry. I was going to say, I thought my screen had frozen. Yeah.
No, sorry. It's my hovering over the mic. I thank Councillor Barrow for the response on the gritting. I think I look forward to the response on that, but and also I thank her for the work she's doing. But it does up to scrutiny is a member's function, and therefore it's important that members are involved and members have the opportunity to scrutinise what is going on. And I do think that another meeting could have been arranged, maybe not early Feb, but maybe mid Feb, but before March, to actually look at the performance of WSP and particularly Keir, because there is so much controversy out there about potholes, about what is happening and not happening with highways, that I think members should have been given the opportunity to examine this earlier.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say anything, Joyce? Or?
Yes, I can assure you, David, that members will have the opportunity to do that. The problem is, of course, that as the officer who writes the report hadn't actually finished writing the report, there was nothing to scrutinise. And I can tell you that within the report, there will be some good news, as I've already discussed this with him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Roger, would you like to read out your question or?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and read it fairly quickly. Councillor Roger Evans from the Longdon Division. It was determined over 12 months ago that the key performance indicators being used to determine how our highways contractor delivered and was paid for services that this council required were inadequate, and needed to be re-evaluated. In recent months to various scrutiny committees and also council, reference has been made a number of times to new key performance indicators, KPI, that will be used in future to judge the performance of Kier, our highways contractor. It was reported by the consultant employed by Shropshire Council prior to his leaving last summer that the work involved in producing a new set of KPI indicators had been completed. This was shown in a report he provided. However, since then, other reports have been published which stated that these were still being looked at and needed adjusting before being finally agreed by all the parties involved. These KPIs, as the name implies, will be used to monitor and determine payments Shropshire Council will be making to our contractors for the work they have carried out. The role of this committee is to look at and monitor how well this council is performing and delivering the services to residents. A major part of this is to look at and take note of key performance indicators, to ask questions about them. Can we be informed what is happening regarding these key indicators concerning highways, and also be provided with information regarding how well Kier, our highway contractor, is and has performed in relation to them, please? Can we be informed what is happening regarding these key indicators concerning highways? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roger. I think Daniel, are you going to read out the response from Andy Wild?
Hello there, Chair. Yes, Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. Yes, I'll read Andy Wild's response.
Yeah, okay.
Here it is. I'll start again. The first full set of results for December 2020 have now been calculated. The first meeting of the Performance Service Group is being held today, 20th of January 2021, to review and verify the draft results. Indications are that the contractor has not hit the required level for key performance indicators 1 and 3, and investigations are underway to understand the reasons. Key performance indicator 8, customer satisfaction, is not yet in place and is planned for the start of April 2021. The remaining 6 key performance indicators have been met. These indicators will also be reviewed at Operational and Strategic Board as part of the new contract governance process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Roger, would you like a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chairman. I note in a note here that there's 9 KPIs. Okay, but the performance of the council is for us to look at. KPIs are part of it, not just 9. Are they now agreed? Yesterday, I was at a meeting and I was informed that Shropshire Council at present are issuing instructions to Kier for work. Kier then totally ignore them. Kier are then fined. They pay their fine and take no notice. Shropshire Council officers are upset, not happy at what is happening. No work is carried out. What is Shropshire Council doing to ensure the work that we, Shropshire Council, tell Kier to do, and to ensure that it is actually carried out? The performance meets the criteria that Shropshire Council have agreed that Kier should be doing. And I'm not happy at all, Chairman, that there's no officer here to actually answer questions. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Roger. So do you want to answer that, Mark Barrow, or do you want to provide a written response to all of the committee?
I can probably do both, Chair, because I can answer at one level, but I think Councillor Owens is after a bit more detail.
Yeah, okay.
There's a danger of kind of almost going through the scrutiny meeting that we were just talking about for place scrutiny as well, isn't there? I think at a high level, if it's the efficiency stroke, if you like, effectiveness of our highway service, I just need to make the point it's not just about Kier, because there are other, they're working in a much more mixed economy, and there are other people, including some gangs we employ, that are doing work on the highways. To illustrate that point, in 2019, the service carried out something like 11,000 repairs on the highway network. In 2020, it carried out 16,000. and it did that and at a cost of 1.4 million less. So there's been a huge amount of progress in that service. There is a continued focus on the performance of Kia. What will happen is at the end of March, Kia will be formally adopting our software system called Confirm. So all of the kind of performance, all of the issues about photographs of jobs being done, etc., will get swept up with the adoption of that system. So the performance will be completely transparent. So it's right that we do have the KPIs and we look at the past performance, but going forward from the beginning of April, it'll be much more kind of a dynamic process. So rather than having to wait for the reports and indicators over time, we'll be completely connected to the front line of what's going on within Kia, which is a welcome development, I think, for all of us. So in terms of the performance and against the individual indicators, Chair, we'll provide some sort of information to members following the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, Mark. Daniel Webb, you've been your name's been flashing. Did you want to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. I just wanted to note that although obviously regrettably the officer concerned is unable to attend today, we are working to make sure that there is an equal amount of opportunity of time for members to scrutinise both the annual report submitted from Kia and from WSP. I would also note as well that the Place Overview Committee in December agreed that it would carry out a review of performance indicators and indeed Highways Improvement Plan. That was scheduled to take place on the 2nd of March. Because we're moving to items that were from the postponed meeting in late January, what I'm working to do at the moment is to put into place an additional meeting at the end of March to make sure that we have enough time to cover all these. So, just to reassure the members and the public in general that there will be opportunity to look at this in more detail.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Daniel. So I'm going to move on to agenda item 6 now, which is Shropshire's Economic Recovery, Transformation and Resilience Framework. And the officers we've got are Mark Barrow and Hayley Owen. So I take it, Mark, are you going to introduce this item?
Yes, I am, Chair. And just to call out, notice Deputy Leader Steve Charmley has joined us to support on questions as well. So just to set the scene for members, you'll hopefully all have a chance to read the report, but just to set the wider context, the economic growth strategy for Shropshire was set in 2017 until 2021. So we were planning to update that this year, but of course no one could have predicted what the pandemic would have done in terms of accelerating the change that's taken place within our economy. And in many ways, there's been a paradigm shift in the move to many aspects of it, particularly in relation to home and agile working. And there's lots of evidence about how much of that is going to continue for the long term and how it's fundamentally changed things such as commuting patterns, location of work, etc. One of the things that we've also seen is it's led to people questioning their work-life balance, their own quality of life, and where they live. So through the pandemic, actually Shropshire has had an extremely strong property market. And the estate agents have been telling us in a residential sense they've never been busier. And you'll see at 6.4 how the increase in commercial property inquiries from January to June last year was 75% up on the previous year, which was the biggest increase nationally. And that was a piece of work carried out by the Estates Gazette, which is the go-to journal for people in the property industry. So, you know, there's evidence for that. It's not just anecdotal. Also talking with a retail specialist the other day, the consolidated kind of view emerging is that the rise in internet retail has meant that there's been an acceleration in that change by about 5 years. So really kind of interesting kind of changes that are meaning everybody's got to review their strategies going forward. In terms of local impacts, at the beginning of the pandemic, Shire counties such as Shropshire felt the impact more than urban economies. And that reflects the profile of our economy in terms of the proportion of visitor economy, hospitality, events, leisure, the sorts of things that that we all know and enjoy, you know, actually have been really hit hard. But also, economies such as construction initially were hit really quite hard. And Shropshire has a disproportionately high amount of construction employment, for example. But to illustrate that, at one time, Bridgnorth and Ludlow job centres saw the second highest increases in universal credit claims and unemployment claims in the whole of the East and West Midlands region that Job Centre Plus cover. So that was really quite concerning, but it was a trend where other shire councils were not far behind us. And you've got some figures in the report, Chair, in terms of the changes in universal credit claims and unemployment, which is starting to come back in some ways, thankfully. This current lockdown has just kind of halted that a bit. But I'd like to call out also notice that about a third of people in self-employment have also been on support, as have, the furlough scheme generally. So it's been about a third of the economy where people have been in work. There's broadly about a third that in some way is public sector of one form or another, and a third of people that have been on furlough as well. So, really kind of gives you an idea of the kind of impact on people as well as on business. So we were instrumental in setting up 2 task forces last year in June, an economic one to focus on what we're talking about today, but also a social impact one, which was looking at people and the people impact. So that was about housing, frontline support, the voluntary community sector type activities, really kind of penetrating communities on the front line, food poverty, that kind of stuff. So lots and lots of activity that's been coordinated with all sorts of partners and other agencies through those task forces. And that's something I want to stress is this hasn't been us working on our own. This has been us working with people like Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses, DWP, colleges, universities, a range of other sector skills leaders as well. So a lot of activity at lots of levels. Our focus in the economy has been initially to make sure that we support business as much as we can. So getting grants out the door has been absolutely key. And there's another set of grants that have landed in relation to the current lockdown that take our grant totals for Shropshire businesses that we've administered to in excess of £100 million. So a huge effort on behalf of lots of colleagues, particularly Matt Potts in the economic growth service with colleagues and people also in our financial services to get that through the door. So, I'd like to say thanks to all of them. In terms of skills, there's been a lot of kind of frontline activity supporting the people impacts, particularly the newly young unemployed as well, picking up on initiatives such as Kickstart and apprenticeships, etc. And the Growth Hub have been really helpful and supportive in that sense. In terms of other initiatives, we've continued to drive the big things that we as a council are doing, because that has an impact, such as, the Big Town Plan that's been launched this week, the Mile End development in Oswestry, the Northwest Relief Road, business parks, as you approved at full council members last time, and a range of other things. But also, we've done a lot of work in our market town centres, as you know, in terms of supporting social distancing, temporary measures for cycle lanes, free car parking, more pavement licensing to give people flexibility when they needed it to maximise what they could in terms of economic opportunity. Brexit was a challenge because of the way that the negotiations literally went to the wire, but we were working closely with people such as the NFU and other key sectors to assess potential impacts and look at what we could do to support. So there were lots of initiatives in the background in relation to supporting the Chamber of Commerce and the Growth Hub in terms of connecting people to training and information exchange type awareness raising sessions on things like new import and export licensing and form filling type processes to kind of help skill up our local businesses, and there's been a huge amount of work in that sense. So hopefully in that kind of change of process and administration, we've done a lot. So Chair, the recommendation, as you can see there, is that we're going to produce a framework in relation to recovery, transformation and resilience that will then later this year inform a rewrite of the economic growth plan to take account of all the changes that we're all seeing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 people who want to ask questions here. David Vasma.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to, first of all, thank the officers for this report. It's very useful indeed to get some details. But one thing that concerned me was the fact that the green agenda doesn't appear until 7.11 in this report, and really the meat of the discussion there is in 7.12. And I thought that with our commitment to, to taking action against climate emergency, reduce our carbon emissions, that really this should have been absolutely central to this report. And I'm a bit disappointed that there wasn't more. There wasn't more in it about this area, and particularly in paragraph 7.12. There's details about working with partners. I'd like more information about that, and also it lists a number of sectors. Now, it'd be interesting to know what sort of record there is of companies in Shropshire working in this sector. What are we doing apart from obviously developing skills to actually tap into this market, this area of economic growth, which I'm sure is going to expand exponentially over the next 10, 15 years.
Okay, do you want to comment on that, Mark? Or
yes, certainly, Chair. So the fact that it appears that as item 7 on this paper doesn't reflect its relative priority, just as a reassurance to Councillor Vasma, actually we're literally, and I mean sincerely, going flat out to push forward on green/carbon reduction based initiatives, and there's quite a few things in the pipeline. I guess the thrust of this report, though, Chair, was more aimed at what we were doing to support businesses through the crisis, rather than that really big bit about the forward look. But as a reassurance, absolutely. I mean, everybody is talking about it being a green and digital recovery, and just to reassure Councillor Vasma and other members, that's absolutely going to be at the heart of this. There's a range of things in there, though, also, so for example, I'm led to believe that Shropshire's the 5th biggest generator of renewable energy in the UK, as geographically. So, absolutely, we're coming at this from a strong place. To be fair to Adrian Cooper, he's developed a really ambitious programme, Chair, which maybe members will have sight of at this committee at some future meeting or another one of the scrutiny committees.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got Roger Evans, Alan Mosley, Cecilia Motley, and Steve Charmley. So, okay, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulate Mark and the officers on the production of the report and the work that they've done. If one looks at it and the amount of work that would be involved in distributing all the grants and doing everything there, it is to be congratulated. I did say Cabinet that we had to return too much to government, but we are where we are. But my question for this meeting, and I asked it at Cabinet, but the portfolio holder answered it, but it wasn't really within his remit, so he didn't answer the part that was interested me most, and that was on page 11 of the report, and that is Brexit. There is a task and finish group formed to have a look at it. There was an officer working party also looking at Brexit at one time, meeting quite often, but the task and finish group, I think it's 18 months since they met. Should they be meeting? We are told that there are many businesses now being affected by Brexit. We are out, and that decision's being made, whether you agreed with it or not. But businesses are being affected. Is there anything that Shropshire Council can do? Shropshire Council can make representations to any outside bodies, including government, to help them overcome the difficulties that they say they are encountering. So, task and finish group, is it going to meet, or is it now being stopped from meeting? What are officers doing about it? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I think that was Gwilym Butler's committee. I don't know who the vice chair is, but we'll perhaps look, I'm conscious of time, Roger. We'll come back to you with an update on that, if you're content with that.
Okay, Chairman, yeah, it is a task and finish group, and we've got a scrutiny officer as well, but the scrutiny officer can take it away and call the meeting, but because the absence of a chairman should not stop it. There was a vice chairman, I would have hoped, or the main committee, its parent committee, could actually sort something out for it. Not one way or another.
I know, I'm just saying, we'll hear back. We will hear back. We'll get Mark or Daniel to come back to us on that one. Okay, so Alan, you wanted to speak next.
Yeah, a topic that's quite close to my heart, but I've got no pecuniary interest in, and that's pubs. I noticed recent newspaper reports that something like 50% of earlier grants to pubs as a result of lockdown and fourth tier closures has not been paid out, and the more recent grants for wet-based pubs, 75% have not paid out. Could I just ask what Shropshire's record is on these two awards in terms of them acting as a conduit for central government grants, please?
Yeah, it's a very important question, Alan. Yep, Mark, would you like to take that one, or
Yeah.
James?
James may want to come in. I'll have to get back to you with the exact figures, Chair. I mean, there's a number of schemes that landed just before and during the kind of Christmas break that really played to wet-led pubs. And there was an odd week where we changed tier before the lockdown, and all of that has come into play. One of the interesting kind of bits in here, though, that just to kind of stress is that even a lot of our restaurants, just so members are aware, are covered by this, because a lot of those restaurants, maybe 60% of income is wet-led. So therefore they fall under the definition of wet-led. So it's not just what you might think, the local booze around the corner. Actually, this has affected a lot of people. And all I can say is I know that colleagues have been really doing what they can to get money out the door as fast as they can. I'm not sure if there's anything James would want to add to that.
Do you want to add anything, James, or are you content with that reply?
No, I'm quite happy. If there's any further that Alan wants to know, then I'm quite happy to come back on that. But I'm happy with Mark, what Mark said so far.
Okay, thank you.
Well, without causing massive bureaucracy, I'd just like to have a note of what the record is on that. Sometimes, James, please.
Chair, if I can jump in. Alan, we're pulling together a report at the end of this week as a bit of a snapshot on all grants. There's no reason why members of this committee couldn't have sight of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I've got Cecilia Motley's next on my list. Cecilia.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just quickly, Mark, this is a very interesting report. There is one thing that makes me slightly nervous, however, is the fact that we talk very much about the need for, digital, smarter infrastructure. Unfortunately, I still don't think our digital infrastructure is meeting our expectations as of now, let alone if we do indeed see Shropshire really growing as a commercial commercial hub, which I hope we will. And I hope also, I would just like to add that all parts of Shropshire will be able to benefit from the increased commercial interest in the county. But I am nervous about the fact that I know, despite the fact that Chris Taylor works incredibly hard, and I pay tribute to him, I really do, because he does a fantastic job. But I am still extremely concerned about the fact that there are still far too many not spots. There's still too much really dodgy internet around. I mean, it's difficult for some of us to manage to complete a Teams meeting without the line crashing out, 2 or 3 times. And we do have to rely not just on BT, but also on smaller providers who I think in some cases are slightly overstretching themselves such that they can't deliver the service that they're promising. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, but I'd just like to draw this to your attention. Chris knows about it and probably knows what I'm talking about. But I do think this is absolutely fine, but we've got to get all things in proportion. Of course, we welcome much more interest in Shropshire. That's absolutely wonderful. But if we can't meet the expectations of people who are probably coming up here from the southeast, where they are used to a high level of service, then they're going to jolly well go back to where they came from at some point or another once the COVID pandemic has died down. And we really need to grab these people, keep them and get them working in our economy. So I do think that this is an important point, and I do hope that that it's something that you are really going to give a laser-like concentration on, because it's vital. Otherwise, we might as well forget it, frankly.
Okay, thank you. So just going in order, Steve Charmley's next. However, Roger's asked to speak about a discretionary payment. So I just wonder, actually, we have Roger first, and then we can get Steve Charmley to round everything up and finish off. Is that all right? Yep. You happy with that, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Roger, do you want to ask your question then?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman, for slotting me in. It is about discretionary payments. There's a lot in the news today and the last few days about payments that have not been carried through from government. See, there's a note in the report. I presume that's the previous occasion and not the one that is being talked about now amongst the government, about numbers that have applied and the numbers who have received it. Where is Shropshire at present, please?
I think Mark answered that question, but a bit earlier. But there you go, Mark. Do you want to answer the question?
Yeah. Just to confirm, Chair, that's all part of the information that we can circulate on Friday.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so Steve, do you want to just round up, because I think everyone's had a fair chance to speak now.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's been an interesting debate, and I appreciate that the majority of the comments have been positive regarding the paper. I think it's important that we all pay tribute to the council officers who've not only dealt with the changes to working practice themselves throughout COVID, but also managed to turn around the huge amounts of grant funding throughout the pandemic. You've heard Mark eloquently outline the impact of COVID and the other challenges which we've had to deal with as part of the economic team. And our plan is for this framework to pull all these threads together and help inform the new strategy, which takes us forward beyond the lifespan of the current economic growth strategy, which we're looking to refresh. COVID's obviously been a huge challenge, and as Mark's already outlined, the show is very much carrying on. We've got schemes at Mile End. There's numerous schemes around the county which you've either had cabinet or council papers brought forward or will be coming forward in the next couple of months. There really is an awful lot going on, and I'm hopeful that this new strategy will set out a route map for not only the recovery from COVID, but the future direction of this council. Just a couple of comments on some of the questions. The green agenda. I don't see the green agenda as being a bullet point in a report anymore. It's a golden thread throughout the reports. It is very high on our agenda and something which we all should be aware of and reflective upon as we go forward. Roger, on Brexit and task and finish groups. We've got the economic task force, which is primarily COVID related, don't get me wrong, but it also covers Brexit and everything else which is focused on the economic recovery within the county and across the borders. And Alan, you'll be pleased to hear that I've just signed off a press release calling for wet pubs to get in contact and chase up for grant funding if they haven't already applied for. There is money in the pot there for those pubs who are still thinking about applying, so I would urge them to do so. And then finally, I can't remember whose point it was, but I think it might have been Roger's. The grant funding is very complex. There are several different rounds for several different groups of business. The latest one we got the guidance for late on Friday. We launched the application process for it, and the latest estimates are that we'll pay out over £17 million by Friday this week. So not a bad turnaround, and I hope that businesses will be appreciative of the work that's going on behind the scenes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read out and move the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee supports the principles of setting out an economic recovery, transformation and resilience framework, and that the Executive Director of Place, in consultation with the portfolio holder for assets, economic growth and regeneration, develops the framework. This will inform a new economic growth plan and strategy refresh for Shropshire Council, which will be brought to the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee in 2021. So later in the year. Have I got a seconder, please?
I'll second, Claire. Joyce Barrow.
Have I got anybody who's not in favour of the report? That will make it easier. No, I think, judging by the questions, everyone's quite happy. So I'll take that as a unanimously agreed. So that's great news. Now, I'm conscious that I've had a lot of emails off different people wanting to speak about the next item number 7, Civic Centre options and appraisals. And so on that basis, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask us to have, if I say 7 minutes, because I think it's about 28 minutes past 3. So if we can just have a quick 5 minutes, quick 7 minutes, come back at 25 to 4, having able to brew a cup of tea, and we'll start on that. So everyone mics themselves and
Deliveroo, Waitrose, Partridge, Selfridge, Harvey Nichols.
Oh,
So there you go.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
What are you going to get? You got your
Whatever you want.
last time.
Joyce, can you mute yourself? Or
Oh, sorry, did you want me? Thought you said we're taking a break.
Hi Joyce, you didn't take your mic off, unfortunately.
Oh, didn't I? Oh, well. That was good news. It's fine.
Absolutely.
Okay, are we all back in? Yep. Can we just, Tim Smith, are you ready?
Hi, Chair. Yes, I am.
Right, good. Okay, and Steve Charmley's back as well. Yep. I'll just see. Amanda, are most people back in now?
I'm not able to tell, I'm afraid, Chair.
Okay. So my reckoning, we're just about had our 7-minute break. Okay. So we're going to move to agenda item 7. The officers presenting this report are primarily Tim Smith. Mark Barrow is also available, Director of Place, and the portfolio holder. So if I can ask, I presume you're doing the introduction, are you, Tim?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Yeah, so if you'd like to introduce the report, because we have, as I say, we've received a lot of questions, and I think people have emailed in questions. I presume that Roger, Alan, and myself will pick up on those when we come to the questions. Okay.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine. Are you happy for me to?
Yep, I'm happy for you to continue now. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, so thank you very much, Chair, and hello, committee members. My name is Tim Smith. I'm the Assistant Director for Commercial Services at Shropshire Council and author of the report. I will just, if I may, just summarise the key features of the report, if that's okay. And obviously, as you said, Chair, if there's a number of questions, I don't want to go through it in too much detail in the presentation, because clearly it's available for members to read. So in short, the purpose of the report today is to update committee members on the work that's been undertaken following the council decision back in 16th of July 2020. And as a reminder, which is set out in the report, that featured 4 main recommendations. One was to stop the Shire Hall redevelopment project that had been proceeded up to that point. It was very clear that a different approach was required, as decided by council, and that involved relocating the council's headquarters to Shrewsbury Town Centre. The report today, therefore, focuses on 2 aspects. Firstly, to provide to committee members, as was set out in the recommendations of that July report, to provide an evaluation of the potential civic centre locations in Shrewsbury Town Centre, along with the outline costs and benefits of those options, and also for officers through our Executive Director of Place, Mark Barrow, and our portfolio holder, Steve Charmley, to work on a potential disposal strategy for the Shire Hall. Today, that report is with you, and I think, if I may, if I can just sort of focus on those 2 key aspects. So firstly, to say that in November 2020, officers commissioned an independent review of the options for the town centre for potential venues for the civic centre base. 5 options were appraised. 3 sites or buildings that were owned by Shropshire Council, and those are named and set out in the report, and 2 that were privately owned. The consultants that were involved, who have done a lot of work for similar local authorities, took on board obviously the key criteria really that we were looking to appraise those against, and they set out 10 criteria for those, which are included then in paragraph 4.7 of the report, and I will come back to those. The assumed accommodation requirements are set out in paragraph 4.9, and I think committee members will probably take quite a lot of interest then in 2 key features of that report, I feel. One is the scale of the provision that is set out in that table, which says that 5,544 square metres are required, not only for the council itself, but also for other potential users to whom we could accommodate, and also from whom we could gain some rent for their occupation and co-location with us. It probably is also worth noting as well to committee that 5,544 square metres compares to the Shire Hall building as currently used and structured, which has 20,516 square metres. So I think committee members can probably see the scale of the reduced accommodation requirement that is being set out in this report, and I'm sure there would be some comments or questions that would emerge from that. Broadly speaking, because that 20,516 also includes the basement of the building at the Shire Hall, broadly speaking then the 5,500 square metre figure is about a fifth of the scale of the Shire Hall, just for members to note. So in terms of the criteria that are set out there, just to let people on the committee know, the criteria were grouped and they were grouped and scored using a quantitative weighting, and that then has been applied to each of those the criteria, and then each of those 5 options were scored against this. What I haven't included in the report, Chair, is any more detailed information about the relative weights of scores that have been given or percentages that have been given to each of those 10 criteria, and also the report summarises the scores of the appraisal in paragraph 5.2. It doesn't necessarily provide all the detail of all the scores against each criteria for each option. If committee members would like that, that can be supplied subsequent to the meeting if the chair and committee believe that that's the right way forward. And obviously, as officers, we can do that. That isn't a problem. So the results, as I mentioned, then are set out in paragraph 5.2, and I think as members can see from that, the Pride Hill Shopping Centre was scored the highest by what I would describe as quite some margin. The point scores are clearly there and set out, you know, for you all to see. The estimated cost, and I must at this point emphasise that this is an estimate of cost. So these are using costs that are indicative and at quite a high level based on what we describe in the report as industry recognised estimates based or provided by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, the RICS. Is 12,474,000, so we'd say 12.5 million. And whilst that does include an element of contingency for build cost and fees, the report also states that because they are high level, we would need to obviously undertake a more detailed appraisal to ensure that those figures were robust. But in essence, that's what we would be looking in principle to do when a further report is taken to council next month. So the summary really, I would just say on this particular section of the report is that criteria have been set out in quite some detail. Weights have been given to those criteria for those 5 buildings. Each have therefore been assessed on a consistent basis. More detail can be provided with the caveat that a couple of the buildings are anonymised in the report because they are not owned by Shropshire Council. And also enough just to mention as well, if I may, that also in the appropriate table in the report, you will see that there are references to partners, but those are not named in the report at this stage. Reason for that being is that while Shropshire Council actually leads what's called the One Public Estate Partnership in Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin, and that has given us the opportunity to work in some detail for quite some time with a range of public sector partners to review their accommodation requirements. They have asked not to be named at this stage publicly because clearly what they would like to do is ensure that by working with us and us taking the lead on looking at a civic hub and a civic based in the town centre, that and if we then proceed into the next stage, they are then more comfortable in actually then taking reports to their respective executive boards for further analysis, if you like. I think also worth mentioning then really, and particularly from an officer's point of view, and also as an officer that equally isn't working at the Shire Hall at the moment, which is obviously the case for the majority of staff, and whilst that can be challenging, and I think we all recognise that, and I hope the report does reflect the fact that we believe that our staff are absolutely crucial to the success of how we're trying to deliver services under quite a difficult environment currently. There is an acknowledgement of what I hope committee would realise on two things really. Firstly, and before the pandemic, the Shire Hall building itself was not a not a efficient use of space, let's say, for a building of its scale and age. There were a lot of costs implicit with it in its condition, how it was configured, and how it's ventilated, how it's heated. A lot of costs were associated with that building. So members will recall that there had been a previous proposal to refurbish all of the building, and a very extensive project, which subsequently has obviously been dropped, but is referenced in the report at 24 million. So therefore, the proposal for the town centre to actually, at a high level, assess the cost associated with a building that currently functions as a retail centre, but could, subject to planning, be converted, is broadly half of that cost. The other thing to say, which the report perhaps isn't as strong at referencing, and I think I've picked up, Chair, that through some of the questions that I know are likely to be fielded or have come through, is that the smaller footprints that is being assumed here for accommodation in the town centre doesn't mean to say that there aren't other places around the county that our staff and partners actually could use as in terms of what we would call drop-down spaces and desks. Because, as I say, although we are in lockdown at the moment, we are very aware that the well-being of our staff does include them working, as I mentioned before, under challenging circumstances at home. Many are homeschooling, some are caring as well. So, you know, it's really, really important to say that the town centre venue looks smaller and it will drive footfall, if agreed, into the town centre, which we believe is much needed. But it isn't the only answer. It is part of a wider picture and network of places in which our staff can work. So in summary, on that particular aspect, on the option appraisal work, the independent review, which has been reported today, is saying that the Pride Hill Shopping Centre can fully accommodate the council and the partners who have indicated their interest in working and locating with us in the town centre. It does therefore provide a higher rental income for the council against some income assumptions that we've made to date. Clearly that then drives an income into the council. It helps to cover any loan costs associated with it, but we would need to do some further work on that. And in timescale terms, because that one of the clear parameters of the criteria is to try and put this move in place before 31st of March 2023, independently, the people have said that is really the principal option that they have reviewed and that they are commending to us. So that is a summary of the first part of the report. Shall I, Chair, just move on to the second quickly and it'll take less time?
Yes, you can. Yep.
Okay, so the second part then is the potential disposal strategy for the Shire Hall. A smaller section in part really, because obviously the recommendation said that officers were to go away and work on a potential disposal strategy for the Shire Hall. I suppose the first thing and the key thing to note is, as a council, you know, we have got a key responsibility for what we would call place making and taking the need of the community where there is evidence of need in any part of the county to actually shape the development need and that we have in all of our particular areas. We believe that the Shire Hall itself, the site on Abbey Foregate, provides an excellent development opportunity. It's located at the heart of a residential district as set out in the report. It provides a strong option for further housing and also to address further unmet housing need that we believe exists in the county. In Appendix A to the report, we've actually, as officers, set out there a potential development plan and area and site. So there's a red line boundary there, which I think many of our elected members would be familiar with the site. We are, as part of that development area, excluding any development from the what we refer to as the playing fields, from the Unison Club, the bowling green as well, because we believe that they are important community assets and provide the appropriate community open space. We haven't at this stage within that appendix or within that red line made any assumptions for the site that is currently being used as a testing site, COVID testing site off London Road, that we know locally as the overspill car park. That's not to say that at some future point that couldn't be brought into the development review. The report at 7.3 to 7.5 does set out the process for the disposal of sites, and I think it's important for committee members who I'm sure do know those, but are reminded of the process that we have to follow. There is a consideration clearly for the achievement of best value. There are also other key considerations that we need to take into account as part of that disposal, and I believe we've set that out as officers for you. And then also, very particularly for the Shire Hall site, there is some very specific things that we do need to take into account in the disposal strategy. I do list those in the report, and clearly the decommissioning and the demolition of the building itself and any associated buildings that would need to be cleared as part of that is a major piece of work. Again, I think people locally and those that use the building are aware that the building is extensive. There is a lot of ICT and telecoms equipment on the roof, and infrastructure that serves and provides not only that building but the wider community in town. Those are key considerations in terms of reconfiguring the site, as is how you access and park around that site at the Shire Hall, and how people use the recreation facilities that would be hopefully retained as well as we move forward with that development plan. We have undertaken as officers some soft-market testing, given some of the constraints and things that we have to consider there. We have started an engagement which has included recent site visits from Homes England, who is the government agency known as the Homes Accelerator, who have got a remit to look if they can actually move forward sites in local communities and provide funding for that purpose. And we've also had some initial conversations with the council's own housing development, Cornovi Developments Limited, as well, who have also started to look at the specification for the site if it is to be developed within the red line that is shown in Appendix A. Clearly, there's an option to put out the site as what we would call open market formal tender. That's fine, that can derive best value. However, I think we also need to consider what you get from that. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not so good. You know, having a control over what's developed, the mix of housing, the affordable elements, the community infrastructure, levy contributions, etc. It's really important, we feel, that the officers work with elected members to actually set that specification out. The aim, therefore, and in summary, as I say, is to say that at committee today, we are giving you an update in terms of the output of the option appraisal with a clear steer that the highest ranking venue in the town centre for the relocation of the Civic Hub is the Pride Hill Shopping Centre, and that further work will be done on the potential disposal strategy for the Shire Hall within the time parameters that have been agreed by Council. I think probably I would summarise by saying, Chair, that a report will go to Council on the 25th of February, informed by the comments and the questions that we get today, to allow Council as a collective to decide how they want to move forward. And I think that's probably it in summary.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got loads of people wanting to ask questions. Before we start, I had an email along with Alan and Roger from Mike Hymas, who used to be, I think, Assistant Director for Highways, and he asked a question about flooding. You know, how, you know, if we had a major flood, how would we get people in and out? So if you just answer that one first, please, Tim, and then I'll go to everybody else who wants to ask a question. You're on mute, Tim.
God, I thought I was going to get away with that. Sorry. I've seen the question from Mike. I was just saying, I remember I used to work with Mike. Mike was raising the question quite rightly of flooding in Shrewsbury Town Centre and asking officers, have we given due consideration to the people that would, if we're increasing footfall, that's one thing, but what if we can't actually get to the venue that we're looking for? The answer really I would say to that is there's certainly potential for other venues that we could use in Shrewsbury if there was any particular area of the town, as we have seen around this time last year actually, that were inaccessible. So we are providing other venues in Shrewsbury and further around the county. But if Mike's question is pertinent to Shrewsbury, we are looking at other venues, drop down space that could be used for our key and essential workers if the town centre becomes compromised due to flooding. Mike also said, and I know he'd know this, about the Kingsland Toll Bridge. We do have an agreement with the operators of that toll bridge where we can have increased use of that to get access to the town centre and to that location if needed. But the options are there, Chair, and it has been thought through.
Okay, thank you. So first question is from Joyce Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. How confident are you that the council can rent out space in the town centre location, and is the demand proven? And also, is the Civic Hub deliverable in the shopping centre by the end of March 2023, and for the quoted cost? My last question, sorry, I've got three. Are we gauging how our staff are feeling about this, because they're the ones that are going to be moved? I don't mind who answers, Steve Charmley, Tim, Mark, carry on.
Okay, maybe if I go with the first one, is that okay? Yeah, with the first part to that. Thank you, Joyce. So firstly, yeah, it is important, and certainly with my commercial role, to ensure that with as much confidence as we can, the ideal scenario would be have pre-let agreements with tenants. That's the ideal scenario. We're not at that point yet, because clearly what we're trying to do is arrive at our preferred option. What I would say though is the conversations that I'm having at a senior level with a number of the partners who, as I say, we haven't named them in this report, but these are strong, active conversations that are going on with organisations that are faced with similar challenges to ourselves. They've got big estate that's very costly. It's taking cost out of their budget really, and not focusing on frontline support, which is what we're finding. We want to invest in people and less in property. We want to reduce that scale of costs. So there are 5 parties shown on that table, anonymised, which are really strong in terms of their interest. So I would reassure you of that. The answer to the second question, which is, do we have a degree of confidence that the timescale and the cost could be achieved? I think, we as officers, we would agree absolutely with the independent review, which is that currently we are looking at the use of the Pride Hill Shopping Centre. I think that is known, that has been reported. We are also then saying, as part of that, how can we achieve, recognising we're working with tenants there at the moment, how can we achieve a sort of a reconfiguration, if you like, for a different use? Is that possible with an existing structure? Yes, it is. We have been working up in a little bit of detail behind the scenes what that might entail, so we will be testing that cost. And because it is an existing building, although I'm not saying it comes without challenges, clearly, that we are confident that it presents the best option of those 5 to deliver. But as I said, I would just caveat that a lot more detail work would need to be done, because obviously whatever that specific change or configuration is can actually then change and vary the cost. The third one, it may be that, do we want to invite either Steve or Mark or even Andy Beckley to answer, I would say, because I'm a concerned member of staff who wants to make sure we get it right as well.
Yeah, I'll happily answer that, Chair.
Okay.
If that's okay. Nothing like upward delegation, is there?
Yeah.
There's a few angles to this, Councillor Barrow. One is that, yes, we're constantly in discussion with members of staff. There's staff surveys that have been going out, gauging all sorts of issues and impacts on our people through the pandemic, including, how easy it is for them to work from home or not, etc. And we're really cognizant that, in some cases, some people have struggled with that. However, what you see in this report is actually the footprint for the council in this new model is something like about 18% that we've got in Shire Hall. That's not all necessarily people working from home. There's another accompanying bit to this, which is looking at just in buildings that we own around the county, having kind of drop down points. So rather than officers kind of travelling in and out of Shire Hall to distant parts of the county, are there places they can drop into in particularly market towns around the county and kind of use as a bit of a local hub. So very much cutting down that whole kind of central commute into and out of Shrewsbury. So there's lots of that kind of going on, and within this, one of the things that we really want to do is make sure that for those people that do struggle to kind of work at home, we can kind of find a way of making that work in this new model. And that addresses a lot of those individual and personal risks, as well as gets into service. But this really kind of is about the new shape of services for the council in a number of ways, and it reflects our agility using technology. And just to finish off, if I can, that plays back, I think, to Mike Hymas's point, which is what we've shown through the pandemic is we can work entirely remotely. So in any emergency situation position we can now use the kind of technology that we're using today and make sure that services continue unhampered.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. So I've got Dave Tremellen next.
Yes, thank you, Claire. I mean, I think everybody knows my view on the scrapping of Shire Hall. Made it clear enough in the past. To me, it's still lunacy. A hacker brought the NHS to its knees, and that should have been an object lesson to anyone. So why is Shropshire Council so confident that they're immune? And likewise, Cecilia spoke and has consistently spoken over time about the shortcomings of internal coverage across the county. And Tim, can you please define democratic allowance? It's in section 4.9, the table 1. And the other thing is that the implication of hot desking means staff will not always have access to paper records. I have a lot of misgivings about this whole plan, but I won't bore everybody. I think there are enough questions in there to keep Tim busy for about 2 minutes anyway, or Mark.
Okay, who's going to go first? You're going to go first, Tim.
Oh, if I may, Chair, then if I just answer the specific, and we'll do a double act again, myself and Mark, if that's okay.
So, and then Mark can cut in when, okay.
Yeah. So the democratic allowance, Councillor Tremellen, is an assumption of 300 square metres is set out in the report. That's and it is a key consideration, actually. I think that and we probably do need a further dialogue with members. There's an assumption that the democratic role and function of things like council meetings, these committee meetings, executive boards that need to meet on behalf of other partners that wish to co-locate with us. And also, in fairness, and I think, and again, this will be for members as well, clearly, is it still important to have room and space within that accommodation that not only members and trust board members can actually sit in after the restrictions are lifted with COVID, but also that members of the public can attend. Is that still important as part of that democratic function and role? We've assumed as officers that it is, that perhaps we can't continue ad infinitum doing things as we're doing currently, and therefore an allowance has been made for that. So it can always be scaled back or even scaled up, quite frankly, but if that answers that specific point for you, that's that. Mark,
okay, so if I just build on that, Chair, so I think the point to stress really in relation to our functional space requirements is just to echo that point I made previously. This is a model that shows we've got literally less than 18% floor area requirement for a central Shrewsbury base than we've got at the moment. Having it in the town centre connects our staff to public transport. All of those partners that Tim have talked about want to be in the town centre too. It connects to other services, and actually as a hub, the ability to kind of work together and create service efficiencies is something we haven't quantified yet, but potentially could really lead to big improvements. So there's something about that in here too. In terms of our teams, they've shown that they can be effective using this technology and using this model. So why would we go back? The other thing to reflect on is, the running costs and all of the maintenance costs and the facilities management costs of Shire Hall are in excess of £1 million a year. That's something we don't need to be spending anymore in that sense. And that long-term maintenance need for the building is another part of the iceberg. What the pandemic has done is accelerate our confidence, if you like, in our ability to work differently. And so, you know, forgive me, Councillor Tremellan, but actually we don't want people to have lots of paper. It's about using technology going forward. And the model that we're talking to people about is the social interaction bit is important. People do need to interact as teams. They do need face-to-face time, but we're looking at something like a 40-60 model. So 40% of your time, maybe you can hub into this new facility or one of those others that I've described in the county, and then still work productively for the rest of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using technology since the early 80s, so you know, there's nothing new there as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, the one thing is you're talking about the rental income as if it was something new. I mean, if we were still in Shire Hall, the rental income would be coming to Shropshire Council anyway. So, you know, wherefore that question?
Yeah, the only thing I can answer to that is that not all the people that Tim's listed here that we're talking to now would want to be at Shire Hall.
I'm not talking about Shire Hall. I'm talking about the income from the shopping, from the town centre shopping precincts.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, presumably Shropshire Council won't be paying rent for the use of the space there. Well, which, if you think about it, is a bit of an anomaly.
It's a slight diversion really in some ways, but absolutely it's central to we bought the retail centres to manage that transition that's going on in retail and the decline in retail space, to make sure that we did it in a way that was sympathetic to the needs of Shrewsbury. So absolutely, I think we see this as consistent, that, you know, the top floor of this building would still play to the retail economy and a lively, vibrant high street. So it's not inconsistent. It's actually making really good use of an asset and bringing forward change that's needed in the town.
Yeah, I just suggest you should stop using it as a justification for actually moving creating a civic centre at the centre of Shrewsbury, and just a supplementary disabled parking, because you keep talking.
Can we stop this conversation, please? Because it's we're now more than two hours into this meeting. I would like to participate and have something, but carry on this dialogue isn't not the way to run a meeting, I don't think.
Just one question, Alan. I just asked about the provision.
Well, I've heard you ask 3 or 4 already.
I really appreciate being spoken over. I don't speak over you. I mean, Christ, there are times when I feel like slitting my wrist when you're on the go.
Right. If you could just wrap it up, Dave, because I have got a long list.
No, I'm off.
You're off. Okay, thank you. Okay, so actually I haven't even got Alan. Alan hasn't put on the chat function to speak yet. Okay, so the next person on here is Julian Dean. Julian, are you there?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So the first question relates to 4.9 in the report, and I suppose my question is in terms of how staff are going to be working, because you're suggesting 550 staff with only 250 desks, and that's, you know, that is a concern in terms of staff's ability to have access to decent facilities. But also in terms of the democratic allowance, and here I have to apologise because I got slightly distracted, and I know Tim's already answered this in part. But I really, you know, I think one of the arguments that people who are concerned about the heritage aspects of the Shire Hall make is that actually the design of the front of it really allows for a real interface between the people and the democratic institutions. You know, the fact that we've got that huge open space, we've got the council chamber, we've got the meetings rooms where people can really engage with the democratic process. That's of real value, and I'm assuming that that's what you mean by a democratic allowance. But I do think we have to take that really, really seriously. The second question, and you did allude to this, Tim, is in reference to 4.7 and the 10 criteria. I actually think that, you know, for proper scrutiny, and I'm not a member of this committee, but I really think people do need to see how those different criteria are weighted. And it'd be interesting if you could, you know, you can do that obviously in paper, but if you could give a comment on that and give us some idea of how they're weighted. And the final thing is just a comment really, that if we are looking at homes on the site some way down the road, and I was in the Big Town Plan session with Mark Barrow earlier on today, and we were looking at potential homes in Old Potts Way and on some of the car parks and things. It really does challenge the need for loads of edge of town urban extensions when we can do some really good sustainable house building in the middle of town, which I know is beyond the realms of this discussion, but I just wanted to raise that because I think it's an important point we need to think about when we're looking at the local plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just had a message from David Vasmer. I didn't see your earlier message, David. I've got you to speak after Karen Calder, sorry. So would you like to answer Julian's question, Tim and Mark?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll try and go through that as quickly as I can. So yes, I think the table that Julian refers to does obviously assume a smaller desk requirement, quite a considerable smaller desk requirement within the Civic Hub. Just as context, I don't think we do include in the report just how many desks we have used in the past, or certainly had in the past at the Shire Hall, but it certainly exceeds 1,000. And I think in a previous report to council, we talked about probably about 800 staff that would normally be at the Shire Hall. So Councillor Dean really is correct in saying there is a lower requirement. I think Mark has also said, however, that what this pandemic has shown is that we can actually be more mobile and agile in terms of where we do our activity of work from, because clearly the activity of work is key. It's not the place, it's the work itself. Having said that, there is a balance to be taken clearly in that when people do need to come together safely, they can. And what we would do, and we have done already with the Shire Hall, is put in a system, a digital booking system that would allow everybody a fair opportunity to book and use that space. In terms of the environment in which you create the people being able to come into the building, yeah, I think Councillor Dean's absolutely right, and I think that is a key design principle really for us in say how could we configure that into a building that currently operates as a retail centre. So that would form part of the detailed work. And as I've said, Chair, I think as I mentioned earlier, I'm more than happy to set out how the weightings have been applied across the various criteria. But just as an example, then you know, the ability to deliver a new civic hub, which is one of the criteria, has been given a weight within the timescale, has been given a weighting of 100% within the quantitative assessment of those, as has the sustainability of the building itself, and by that I mean how it can be done in a carbon reduced way, if you like, carbon efficient way. So I'm more than happy to actually share that clearly with committee members afterwards as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. I've got Cecilia Motley next.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I will try not to take up anybody's time because I think we've been here quite a long time already. I must say I think that Pride Hill is a very surprising choice for a new civic hub. It's a little, to me, it's a little bit like going down a rabbit hole, because presumably Pride Hill is what it is in terms of the dimensions. And whilst we may be able to do things internally, not much of it will be visible externally, presumably. I'm quite concerned about the issue of the staff and how the staff are going to use this hub, because I don't think we should assume that because necessity being the mother of invention during COVID has meant that people have worked from home. I think we need to be very careful not to assume that that has actually enhanced all of their working environments, because I know that quite a lot of officers who normally work in teams in a discrete location together actually find it quite difficult having to work from home and not have that contact. So I think this is a case of horses for courses, and I think we've got to be very careful that we build in flexibilities to this, so that if we find that actually it is particularly valuable for a team to be working together in one particular place, either that can be done local to where their area of work is, and I'm thinking perhaps of, you know, people who may be servicing either the south of the county or the north of the county, as opposed to Shrewsbury. But I think whatever we do, we must retain some flexibility. I really feel that's very important. We're making assumptions at the moment about the way people are going to work, want to work. We've got to make sure those assumptions are really well founded, because I think you might be quite surprised by the reaction to this. The other thing that I think is absolutely vital, actually, rather than talking in a slightly dismissive way about drop-down areas in other parts of the county, I think it's really important to restore some of the presence of Shropshire Council elsewhere in the county, not just in Shrewsbury. There's been this sense that everything has been gathered up into the Shire Hall, and some of it really needs to be able to filter out now, so that those people who actually work most of their time in a particular part of the county can actually be there. And rather than it just necessarily being a drop-down hot desk, all these awful expressions which give you the impression that they're only going to be allowed to be there for half an hour before they get kicked out by somebody else wanting a hot desk, that actually they can sit there and they can work quietly, they can meet people, etc., etc., etc. So some really serious thought needs to go into how that's going to work. The other point that I would just make is that it's all very well having a location bank slap in the middle of Shrewsbury and thinking that everybody can just jump on buses. Do remember that there are an awful lot of us who have to flog in from quite far out of Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury town centre is not a particularly easy place to access if you have to have a car, as a lot of us do. And so just please don't let's fall into that trap of thinking, oh, it's fine. They can all just go and you know, jump on the park and ride, because the park and ride actually extends an already long day even further. And think about the fact that if people do have to drive in, where on earth are you going to park them? Okay, so I'm ambivalent about this decision, I have to say at this point, and I will greatly look forward to further details which might perhaps strengthen my enthusiasm for it. Thank you.
Tim, is there anything for you to come back on there, or?
No, I think that all of those points are very clearly made, so I don't think there's a need to respond on those, but thank you for those. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair, it's Mark. There is one point, which was the bit about visible externally. Clearly, there's a refenestration of the building required to create windows, Cecilia. It's not going to be left as it is with a building that looks internally, just as that reassurance as well.
Okay, thank you. So on my list, I've got Roger Evans, Karen Calder, David Vasmer and Alan Mosley. So Roger, if you'd like to go next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. To be honest, I'm disappointed in this report. We are a scrutiny committee and we should be scrutinising it and have all the information there to do it. And Tim, yep, you can supply the extra information, but it would have been good to have the information today. The majority of the present councillors, and thinking that there's going to be a new council after May, have voted to move from the Shire Hall and maybe move into that white elephant, which is the Pride Hill Centre, which needs to be filled, and this may be a way of doing it. But there's one option which is not mentioned here at all, and that is to rebuild on the present Shire Hall site. I am amazed that that has not been considered and looked at. It's an ideal site. The land is free. We just got to put a building up. The rest of the land can be used anywhere. We're getting partners into that white elephant in town when we're also looking in the big town plan at another 500,000 square foot of offices in the town. Can't understand that. But if one looks at that in the what is there, the red line area shown in the report as an area of 48,000 square metres, splitting into east and west. That's the main site. The west of the road is 37,000 and the east of the road is 11,000. The existing building has, and we all agree we need a smaller building than what is there at present, occupies roughly 9,000 square metres. If one looks at the projected capacity of a building, it's about 5,500 square metres, which you've said. A building on 3 floors would equate to a simple rectangular footprint of just 1,833 square metres, and that isn't much bigger than the annex at present at the Shire Hall. So I'm amazed, utterly amazed, that is not looked at and scored in it. and presented here is just written off, totally written off, and all that's here is the options that are there: Pride Hill, Guildhall, River, and there's 2 private sectors there. Emergency control centre, where's that going to be? I was present and a councillor, like I think Claire, during the floods just after 2000, and we had to use the emergency control centre extensively in the basement of the Shire Hall because we couldn't get anywhere. The floods a few years ago is nothing compared to what happened just after 2000. We had floorboards, we had boards up and walking on boards all over Frankwell, all over Abbey Forget to get in. If we're not doing anything about flood prevention for the next 10 or 15 years, it could well happen again. But surely we should be looking at not refurbishment of the Shire Hall. It may not be economic. It could be another building built on site. We can close off part of our present building, build on site and do a straight transfer. All those, that is not considered, and to me that is an essential part of this which is missing, and we as a scrutiny committee should be able to see that. Comment please, Chairman.
Okay, Mark, do you want to answer that?
Yes, Chairman, happy to answer that. I mean, the only thing I can say about that, Roger, is there's a range of things here. You know, building a new building on the Shire Hall site, you've still got to demolish the Shire Hall and the costs of that and removing the asbestos, etc. And we wouldn't need anywhere near the amount of site that we've got, as I outlined. Our floor usage about 18% of what we've got. And the other bit is that connectivity to those partners and those services is really important. So you could spend a lot of money, much more than we're talking about, building a small building, which we could be sat there on our own. And, you know, just a rule of thumb on what I haven't seen your figures, but a rule of thumb, you'd still be looking at spending £20 million on a new building, which would be much smaller. So I'm not sure that hits all of our strategic objectives. There is another bit about, you know, our people being in the town and contributing to the economy. The economic impact is another side of this, and we would create footfall in terms of traffic that would be coming to and from with us. In terms of the emergency control centre, I think for a range of reasons that's now out of use. You may know, members, that the fire officer condemned some parts of the Shire Hall, including the nuclear bunker, which is a bit of an irony. But we've had to do some work in that area. It's now largely used for storage. So the emergency control centre is now controlled at the fire station. And when there's a bronze, silver or gold, it stands up at the fire station and our people go over to that and everybody works together there. So complete reassurance about any emergency situations with that.
Tim wanted to come back, I think.
Chairman, I wanted to come back as well if I can. Roger Evans again.
Just get Tim in first to answer that bit, and then you can come back.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Evans' first part, where he said that why haven't we taken consideration of the Shire Hall site, and obviously clearly set that out. Very specific reason for that, Councillor Evans, and it's very clear in the report that says that we as officers took forward a responsibility to provide a full evaluation of potential civic centre locations in Shrewsbury Town Centre, along with the costs and benefits. There wasn't, and that was approved by full council back in July 2020. So that's the remit we took on board, and hence the Shire Hall site for the purposes of a civic hub was not taken forward as part of this appraisal.
If I can, Chairman, come back. Yep, I recognise that, but it needs to be recognised that there may be a new council of whatever persuasion, but there will be a number of new councillors, and I would hope there is not too much spent at this time, because it could all be wasted and changed after May. But also, if I can pick up the comment about the fire inspection report, I've asked at least 6, maybe 10 times for a copy of this fire inspection report. They've all been not actioned, no reply. I did have a reply from one side of an A4 in the finish, which showed a little bit of statement. There was no justification for it, no action plan, nothing there at all. I don't know when this fire report came out. I don't know why Shropshire Council didn't do anything with this fire report. I know the council leader in the press release said one of the reasons why we are decanting the top 3 floors was because of a fire report. I've never seen it, and I'm not sure that any other member has seen it. But the justification for decanting, I understand there may be looking at how to put people up on the upper floors, but that's outside of this here at present. There is a brief reference about the fire report, but as a scrutiny, I don't know what it says. I don't know why it is and why we are where we are. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. So we'll get, if you, Tim and Mark, if you can email the committee members about the fire report after the meeting, because I am conscious of time. Karen Calder, your question's next.
Thank you, Chair. Cecilia touched on it, but she didn't really get any answer, and that was around that. Well, there's a lack of a travel and transport plan included in this document, this report, and also about parking arrangements, and also I think Dave Tremellan touched on as well about well, it's all about accessibility, I suppose, disabled parking. The numbers that you're talking about, and I know they're not going to be every day. We're talking about 437 desks. That doesn't include the democratic allowance. So that's, you know, possibly, you know, 300 people who are going to require parking or park and ride. There's the question of if people are using park and ride, if staff are using park and ride, for instance, that's an additional cost to them. I'd just like to a little bit more reassurance and assurance, actually, that this is going to be included in whatever is submitted to full council. And also, I'd like to echo the remarks that were made about if there is information available. I think it was Roger Evans who said, if there is information available that supports this report, it should have been included. We're being asked to make a decision without sight of, for instance, as was said, the weighting, how the weighting has been arrived at. I also share Cecilia Motley's ambivalence towards this proposal at the moment, and I wait to be convinced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to David Vasmer next.
No, can I have some answers, please?
Oh, sorry.
Travel and transport plan and parking arrangements.
Sorry
to interrupt you, Chair.
No, it's all right. Sorry about that, Bill. Some of that's actually been covered, but Tim, if you just fill in the spaces.
Sorry, Chair, I just missed that. Could you repeat?
You do parking, Tim, I'll do movement.
Oh, okay. So yeah, certainly in terms of parking, and I think that's both for staff and members of the public. But if I do both, certainly for parking for staff, I'm not sure if members are fully briefed, but hopefully you are, that we have introduced the My Permit scheme for staff parking now for our staff, and certainly starting to roll that out. So the ability for them to use the council car parks using a digital app that members of the public have access to currently for our car parks is something that would assist them to be able to get to close proximity, not only to the places in which they need to work in Shrewsbury Town Centre, but as Councillor Motley said, please think more widely, and I think that's what Councillor Calder is saying as well. Please make sure that people are able to use that, recognising they need to get within close proximity of where they're working. So that has been taken into account. Certainly, absolutely, the requirements of people with disabilities wouldn't be prejudiced by plans that we're making and coming forward either. And then in terms of movement as a whole, Mark, did you want to just come on that? Because I think that then does touch on how the town centre is used and accessed by members of the public. And I think that's quite, well, it's more than quite, it's a very important consideration. So do you want to just come on that?
Yeah, just to reassure Councillor Calder, there will be a full kind of travel plan that accompanies any kind of final business case that this happens. Conventionally, you'd see something like a green travel plan in a planning process. All of that will be taken into board, and of course it takes account of. And just to cover Councillor Motley's concern, I don't mean to be demeaning in any way about drop down, but local presence points in market towns, remember, are a big part of that too, because we'll be cutting down a lot of journey time, particularly for staff, and providing access to public transport for others. So it's just a reassurance all of that will come forward as part of this wider plan.
Okay, thank you. David Vasmer's next. So we've got David Vasmer, Anna Mosley, Les Winwood, Michael Wood and Peggy Mullock.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Vasmer here from Underdale. Just firstly, I was against the relocation to the town centre. I voted against that at council, and I think it's a disastrous decision, consequential on the council's disastrous decision to purchase the shopping centre. So they've been left with a surfeit of estate, and we now don't need to relocate, and so that's why we're considering this. Firstly, I just want to echo a lot of other councillors' criticisms. We need far more information. I was very disappointed by this report. There's so little information. We're presented with a fait accompli, in effect. We're not being a scrutiny committee, we're being a rubber stamp committee as far as this decision is concerned. I would certainly like to take up the offer of Tim Smith made to provide us with more information, and hopefully I'd hope that we have another meeting quite shortly where we consider that information properly. So the other thing is about staff. I know that there's a lot of concern amongst staff about this move. A lot of feeling that people, feel that their real views are not being taken into account. And I certainly think we need much more information about this, along the lines that other councillors have outlined. As far as accommodation, as we got in 4.9, the assumed accommodation requirements, I'd be interested to know what accommodation requirements has been made for councillors. It says democratic allowance there, but that really does need to be outlined. And there's some councillors who live far out who really do need plenty of accommodation. So the other thing is, as far as the Shire Hall site is concerned, there's no question for Tim Smith here. I noticed on the site you've actually included within development of the site the old tennis courts, which were taken over as extra car parking overspill and had a temporary planning permission given for that purpose. Now, I would have thought, given the concerns about the loss of recreational space in Shrewsbury and elsewhere, that those ought to be taken back as recreational space. They should not be included within the development proposals. And I'd lastly just like to say that, there has been a lot of development in this part of town. We've got the Weir Hill, there was 650 houses. There's a lot of opposition to that. And I think people locally within that area will be very concerned about the further developments taking place. And I don't think it'll be welcome. It'd be nice, actually, in fact, to have more open space and not more building. So I'd be interested in response to some of those, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to go first, Tim or Mark?
Tim.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say Mark? You first or me first?
Tim. Yeah.
Okay. In respect of the former tennis courts, Councillor Vasmer is correct in saying that at the moment the red line does include that as a potential development area. Some provision has been made outside of the red line for parking for users of the playing fields and the bowling green as well, whether or not that is deemed sufficient or not, and also the point made about the tennis courts, could that not also be included for recreational use and brought back to its original purpose? I wouldn't discount that. I'm saying this is a proposal, and one obviously that we would talk to the local member about as well, Councillor Vasmer. It is very much that, a proposal at this stage. Clearly what we don't want to do, and outside of this remit, you and I have had discussions about a venue in your electoral ward in terms of the parking that's required to support leisure provision. So we will take those comments on and we will discuss those with the electoral ward member for sure.
Okay, is there anything you want to add, Mark?
Don't think so, Chair.
Okay, so Alan Mosley's next. Alan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Okay, well done.
I've got one or two questions. First of all, people have mentioned staff attitudes towards this. I'd like to know how many times you've had meetings with the trade unions discussing staff accommodation, and have you actually had a meeting with the trade unions about this particular paper?
Okay, so I'll respond on the second question, which is I haven't specifically had a meeting with the trade unions on this paper, Councillor Mosley. Mark, did you want to?
Yeah, all I can say, Alan, I know that discussions are taking place with trade unions on the wider kind of change programme, not specifically this paper, but the whole process of how the new operating model for the council is coming forward. So we can get back to you with, you know, some information on your question was how many times. I can't tell you how many times off the top of my head, but I can talk to colleagues and find out. But you know, I think the reassurance is there that, you know, certainly, you know, with colleagues around the management team, we really are cognizant of the need to kind of, you know, get the hearts and minds and people supporting the whole, if you like, modernisation programme of the council, because that's really what this is part of, and their role in helping shape that. So, you know, just be reassured that, you know, we're really keen to make sure everyone's engaged in this process.
Yeah, I'm sure that many people will be, but there will be particular difficulties for some that need to be taken into account. And I hope that between now and the council meeting that you can give some assurance that you have at least started to discuss. This is a step change in those changing working practices, isn't it? I hope that you're able to give between now and the council meeting some assurance that you have had meeting with the trade unions, and that is the start of a programme of reaching agreement on the various issues that we're concerned about. Could I have that assurance that that will happen, please?
Yeah, certainly. Well, there's a reassurance that some has happened. Your question was how much. So absolutely, yes, I'll give you that assurance.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about this relocation to the town centre and the other changes that you're proposing within this document. I was also very interested to see that one of the options was to return to the Guildhall. I mean, that's currently occupied by the university and is full up. And you're talking about a change by March 2023. How can that be an option unless the university is closing down or unless there's somewhere else they can move to very, very quickly? How can that be considered an option in this evaluation?
Well, just to close it off, I mean, it's an asset that we owned in the town. You know, let's not let any hairs start running here. There is no proposal to change that, but it was absolutely the right thing for us to do to check what worked, you know, best for the council. And, you know, that was part of an evaluation that was undertaken. So, you know, it was an obvious question that people were going to ask. You know, you own the Guildhall. You know, is there a plan? Might the university be doing something different? You know, who knows? So it was just about asking those questions and giving people that reassurance that it was an option that was looked at. Simple as that. And this paper, as you can see, closes it down.
Okay, so finally, sorry, Claire. I mean, I'm personally in favour of the proposals. Although there's lots of questions that need to be asked, and the devil will be in the detail, as it normally is. I'm surprised that the Lib Dems, who purported to be a progressive type party, seem to be opposing everything at the moment. This is one thing. Roger Evans was speaking very vehemently against the Big Town Plan, which is a visionary statement for the for Shrewsbury town centre and other areas of the town for the next 20 years. It does fit in with the Big Town Plan, clearly, in terms of bringing people into the town. Although I think people ought to recognise, and I don't think Tim's answer to this was good enough, really, that one of the objectives of the Big Town Plan, and this was repeated by Peter Nutting at a town council meeting the other night, would be to take the car parking out of the town centre and situate them in the transit points that you're only too familiar with, Mark. So I think we need to, when we're talking about this, it is an addition and progress towards the Big Town Plan, but we also need to see the Big Town Plan holistically and have answers to those issues as they arise.
Okay, I think actually one thing, you know, we've had a lot of interesting questions, and hopefully Tim can make some alterations to the final report. So let me just read who I've got left here. I've got Les Winwood, Michael Wood, Peggy Mullett, Roger Evans, and then Steve Charmley to wrap up. Okay, so Les Winwood, have you got your question, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think Tim has actually answered the civic hub deliverable or not, and for the amount in the report. So I think I won't go on about that. But what about our connection with the courts and with the lieutenancy? What's happening there? Because obviously Shire Hall and the courts have a partnership there. What could you just give me a guide as to what's happening there?
Yes, very happy to do that, Councillor Winwood. So currently, as you probably know, the Crown Court have actually vacated from regular use of the courts at the Shire Hall and are using the building that sits outside of the red line shown on the appendix. They have actually come to us, and the Lord Lieutenant had asked us to look at this and actually reached out to us to say that because of the demand and the use of that particular building at the moment, could they also come back and have a temporary use, not of the courts in operation, but some of the area of the Shire Hall to assist with the overspill of they haven't got sufficient room at the building currently. So to answer your question, are we considering what they need for the future as part of the One Public Estate work? Yes, we are. So just to give you that reassurance, and that has been raised, as you quite rightly say, by the Lord Lieutenant.
Okay.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you, Michael Wood. Thank you for your patience.
Patience indeed, Madam Chairman. It's really been a long one this afternoon.
A mammoth one, yeah.
It really has, and I won't elongate it any longer than I have to. But I am one, of course, who has to travel in some considerable distance, and therefore can empathise thoroughly with the comments made by Councillor Motley. However, the reason for my staying on all this time was the implications in paragraph 6.5, which Alan, you and I rarely, I guess, actually are on the same wavelength. But it was that paragraph that led me to think about what is this we're actually including, as Mark says, because it belongs to us. We're actually including the Guildhall, but have the supplementary to that is have the university given anyone any indications of their intentions, because 2023 2022 will in actual fact come round very, very quickly. So I think that should be a cause for concern for all of us, because if they decide not to stay, and members will know the amount of money that has been pumped into the University of Chester, where does that leave us with the Guildhall, and where do we go from there if they leave?
Can I answer that, Chair? So just to address any concern, we're having really positive discussions with the university, the new Vice-Chancellor, Eunice Simmons, and her senior team about a strategy for growth, and they're bringing forward plans for continued development of the university. So just to kind of quash any concern you've got, that's not the case. However, and there's a report on its way to, I think, full council, Tim, isn't it, that will be just revealing all of that to members.
Yeah,
well, thank you for that reassurance, and thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to answer the question.
No problem at all. So, Roger, and I suspect Roger wants to have a go at Alan. I don't think it's a question, is it? Is that right, Roger?
It is both, Chairman, especially after the last comment from Councillor Wood. Yeah, we don't sit under a political label here, Alan. You may do, we don't. Scrutiny is non-political. There are free ranges of opinions around the table. Because something does not agree with what I think, that's what I say. I'm not told by anybody, and anybody else from a scrutiny committee should be adopting exactly the same sort of attitude. So I'm surprised at his comment. But picking up what Councillor Wood just said, I will draw attention to 6.2 in the report. The consultants recommend at this stage that the following options are shortlisted: Pride Hill and the Guildhall. Guildhall is not possible. So what the consultants, who we've obviously paid a lot of money to, have come out with one option. To me, I don't understand that. It is, as was said right at the start of the debate, lunacy really doing this. We can continue occupying the site where we are at present whilst another building is put up if that is what is wanted. What the cost benefits of that is, I don't know, but that should be examined at some time to show where we are, what we are, to give the best value for the public money for which we are safeguarders and which we spend on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so do you require a direct response from one of the officers to that, Roger, or?
No, well, no, it's just that I think the officers should go away and have a look at this report, Chairman, to see if is the Guildhall going to be in the mix or it isn't. I'm hoping, and from what is said, the Guildhall is not in the mix. It shouldn't be there at all. It's just there because it's a Shropshire Council property. We should be discounting that from it anyway. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. So the last word's going to Steve Charmley.
Thank you, Chair. And
you're still awake.
Yeah, trying hard. Just coming back to the Guildhall, it was absolutely right to consider it, as Mark Barrow said. You know, it is a Shropshire Council property in the town centre, which was the remit for this whole process. It doesn't stack up. The university isn't going anywhere, so it's dead in the water. Leaving us with Pride Hill. I think this is a golden opportunity to inject some footfall and spend into the town centre, utilising a facility which we've got within the Pride Hill Centre, taking up the lower ground floors and still leaving the upper floors for leisure use, as has been outlined. I'm pleased that Alan is supportive, because this does stack up as a big piece of the big town plan, but I do take on board that yeah, there is details which need to be worked through. You know, some of the comments which we've heard from Cecilia and Karen Calder are very valid. It's undoubted we are going to have to amend and adapt to new procedures and how we access a town centre site going forward. I think we're all going to have to change. You know, I live a long way from Shrewsbury as well, and I'm certainly one who's going to have to change the way we head into council meetings, etc. in the future. God help us if we're ever allowed to. The democratic allowance, you know, that's vitally important going forward, but as some of us have been privy to the strategic development framework for the wider Riverside site, that brings opportunities in itself. It's not all going to be business units and accommodation. Within that, we can be flexible and put more parking, or even a council chamber which is separate. Who knows what's that going to bring forward in the next couple of years? There's a lot of discussion to be had on those points. Bit disappointed with Rogers, you know, sort of dismissing this as a rubbish report. I don't see it being that at all, and I'll certainly look forward to the Lib Dems coming forward with their budget book, costing up a new development on the Shire Hall site, because like most Lib Dem things, I don't think it's going to stack up. That's enough from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So from the Chair, the recommendation is to consider and comment on the work that's taken place covering recommendations 1.2.b and 1.2.c. This shall be included in a report to be considered by full council on the 25th of February 2021. I'm going to move that. Have I got a seconder?
I'll second if nobody else is. Councillor Joyce Barrow.
Thank you very much. So would you like?
Chairman, it's Roger Evans here. Can I just make one quick comment over what was just said? And that is that I have not discounted anything. I am open to any argument about the new civic centre or new offices. What I'm asking is that the full information is actually supplied. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So is there anybody who's against the recommendation? No? Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to item number 8, which is complaints, comments and compliments, the annual report, and that's being presented by Sarah Dodds. Is Sarah here?
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you. So I'm Sarah Dodds. I'm the Council's Feedback and Insight Team Leader. Just to put the report into some context, national regulations mean that all local authorities must produce an annual complaints report. It has to be considered by elected members and made available to the public. So Shropshire Council's report doesn't just cover complaints. We try to include a general overview of all formal customer feedback. The annual report doesn't work on its own or in isolation. We have very regular performance reporting alongside it. So we have quarterly reports that are shared very widely across the council, monthly reports for some teams, and in some circumstances we've actually implemented reports every other week when we not necessarily see a performance issue, but when we're trying to avoid a potential performance issue. We find it's better to be preventative and to prevent complaints from happening in the first place rather than deal with them when they have come into the council. The feedback and insight team's role is to receive formal feedback, to record it, to assess it, to ensure it's allocated against a correct complaints procedure. We allocate to investigators in service areas, and they provide expertise and consider complaints thoroughly and respond as complaint investigators. We oversee the application of the complaints procedures and processes. That's the role the team takes. But we also work very closely with legal services when complaints progress beyond stage 1 and go to stage 2 or 3 of complaints processes. The team also has an important role in providing support and advice and training and guidance and templates to complaints investigators, and will often check complaints responses and do quality checks, and just to make sure that good practice is being applied. The annual report highlights that we had 2,611 cases of formal feedback last year. And 57% of those were complaints. We have seen year-on-year increases in formal feedback and complaints, and we also sometimes see seasonal increases. So any bad weather, we have concerns because that generally then transfers into an increase in complaints. And Mark Barrow's area place, they're particularly affected by seasonal issues. So we do see spikes every now and again. Just to explain, we have when the cases come in, they might come in as a complaints case, but we might have multiple investigations for each complaints case. So if you see some difference in numbers, that explains the difference. So sometimes one complaint case will result in multiple investigations across different service areas. So the summary report highlights that we have 3 main complaints procedures: adult statutory complaints, children's statutory complaints, and corporate complaints. But some of those subdivide into other processes. So we have social care provider complaints, we have multi-agency complaints where we work closely with the NHS and others. So just to move on, picking out a few performance issues. A common issue can often be a lack of communication, so complaints can result from frustration because members of the public don't feel well communicated with. We see that as a common issue across services, and that problem can increase when service areas are under particular pressures. We very closely monitor days to close complaints. This is because any failure to respond in the time expected can mean that complainants then choose to escalate their case. So we work very closely to try and keep days to close complaints low and in line with the closure dates that are set when a complaint is allocated. You will see from the report that highways complaints have formed the top service area for complaints in the last year. We have been working really closely with highways officers to look at that, and we have actually seen a bit of an improvement in Q3, so I'm quite positive that that close working is paying off. We've also had a large number of waste and recycling complaints in the last year, but the same applies, and we are seeing improvement, so I hope that can continue and impact in the annual report next year. We have seen a good mix of complaint outcomes. That's very important. If we don't want to see too many complaints upheld, but neither do we want to see no complaints upheld, because it is important that complaints are fairly resolved, and where fault has occurred, we need to acknowledge that and identify future improvements. Performance overall is very good. Few cases are progressing beyond stage 1. And you'll see from the section of the report detailing local government ombudsman cases that the number of cases remains fairly steady year on year. Although 85 cases were referred to the LGO, a very small number were considered in full, and only 11 were upheld against the council. So I think that I'm very conscious that you've had a long meeting. I think that summarises the main points. And I'm happy to take any questions, but I've also included some recommendations on the summary report for your consideration.
Okay, so I've got David Vasma, who wants to ask a question. Do you want to ask your question, David?
Yeah, it's just obviously I'm a
David, you've muted yourself.
Sorry.
All right. Could you
Thank you very much.
Recommendations up on the screen as well, please, Sarah? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I noticed that a report was prepared for Cabinet on the 5th of October, and that it's a very similar report actually. Well, exactly the same report, and the initial report is slightly, the report presented to the committee is slightly different. I just wondered why, whether that, I'm not sure whether that went to Cabinet, but what the procedure is, why it's coming to performance management now, and if it's been sort of in preparation for some considerable time. Just I was curious as to what the procedure is as far as this is concerned.
I can comment that that is the usual process, that the annual customer feedback report goes to Cabinet and then it's considered by performance scrutiny, but I can't comment on the timing. Unfortunately, this was when it was timetabled.
Right, you're on mute again, David.
Chair, if it just come back, sorry. It just seemed like I just know you want to note this, Chair, but it seems like a very long time for this report to be around and not to be discussed. I mean, obviously there are issues which it highlights, about complaints, which we should be seeing and looking at, and much earlier than now. It's some considerable time now since this report was probably finalised. I do notice there's a slight change in the recommendations as well from the Cabinet and the recommendations which appear here. So I wonder if that could be investigating some explanation as to what's been going on.
Yeah, have you got anything to say about that, Sarah?
I tailored the recommendations for scrutiny because I feel that scrutiny is a different body, and that's the difference. But all of the figures, nothing else has changed.
So basically, they come to us every 6 months, David. So I think that's probably it.
I would be happy to present sooner in the year if that could be accommodated for next time.
Okay, I think we'll have to discuss that within the work programme, Sarah. David, I've got quite a few other speakers. Are you content with your question answers? Yeah.
Yeah, if we discuss it in the work programme, that'd be great, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Sarah, for the report. It makes interesting reading. I noticed that you pick up a number of times where complaints have been withdrawn or had no finding, and you refer to it in several times, including on page 8, where you say that there is concern 16% of the complaints investigation resulted in no finding as regards highways. That is of concern. I have people complaining to me that, and maybe other councillors do as well, that they've phoned up, written in, done all sorts to highways, and they just have nothing at all. And it may be half a dozen different times that they have tried, and it gets it all the way through. And right at the end, and in your summary, you also give a thing about example complaints on it, and I pick up with interest, and I concur with it, that ICT services, it is difficult to make a complaint using our ICT services, and it says in it that there were going to be alterations about member comments and MP comments, but that doesn't seem to be actually fulfilled by, and I think you used the word management, it hasn't been put forward. But I would urge that the ability to put in complaints is looked at. It is cumbersome, it is difficult to do completely. And then my last comment, Chairman, is that I noticed that the LGO has still requested Shropshire Council to look into the time that's taken to actually for them to investigate anything. And I know I've got one or two people in the area that I represent who are trying to make complaints. They've been to the LGO. The LGO have written to Shropshire Council asking for Shropshire Council to investigate it. And the people concerned have written to Shropshire Council several times, and they keep on getting delays and delays and delays. We do need to do it. And with that in mind, I note your recommendations and go with them, but I see in C, the last sentence, the service areas in question are asked to attend the meeting. Can I make that a little bit stronger? Are expected to attend the meeting, and I would like to make that expected, because let's transfer it and have the people who are dealing with it to actually attend the meeting and just ensure that they are here so that we can ask them questions as to, if it does continue, why they're doing it. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Chair, can I jump in there a moment, please?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Daniel Webb here, Scrutiny Officer. It's just picking up on what Roger said there around 6 months. I would note that that I think with specific regard to highways, for example, that could actually be picked up with regard to its performance monitoring in January. So we needn't even wait 6 months. We could do that in the next month or two if you wished.
Okay.
If you want to, Chairman, I'm happy, and the Chairman is here to actually recommend that that is picked up via that overview committee, if you wish. But I'd still like it to be expected in here as well. But yeah, thanks, Daniel. Can maybe put that in as an E if you want to, asking for the appropriate committee to pick up and ask questions about it.
Well, I don't think we need to put it in as a recommendation because we've got the Chairman here, so I think that would be fine. Joyce, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please, Sarah. I'm not sure if you can answer it, but hopefully you can. Every year the council gets a number of claims for damage to vehicles that have been created by going into potholes. Very few of those claims over the years have been successful. I know one year when I queried it, I think only one person won that claim. I'm just wondering how the numbers stack up now. How many claims do we get for compensation on vehicles and how many are won? If you don't know, I'm very happy for you to let us know after the meeting.
Okay. We often get complaints relating to those issues, but we would usually assess them, and if the complainant is asking for compensation in some way or feels that they've incurred costs, we will close it as a complaint and it will be transferred through to the insurance team to be picked up in their process. So it means that we're not double handling. So I don't have any figures on that. It would need to be a question for the under the insurance process.
Okay.
Could we find out that information, Claire? I'd be very interested. Thank you very much.
You can do that, and you know, this bit, Roger's, you know, wanting to look into this, which is fine, and you know, part of that, well, I'm sure a major part of the highways performance is the IT. So it'd be useful if we had, you know, the IT as well as the highways people, because otherwise one will blame the other. So we need them both there really when we look into it. Is everyone content with the recommendations? Roger just wanted to change that one word to expect. I'm quite happy with that. Is that all right with everybody? Yep. Okay. So we're going to move on to the financial strategy task and finish group. What have we got here now? I'll now ask members of the committee for their comments. Please indicate. Okay, you've got to introduce this, Daniel.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Daniel Webb here, Scrutiny Officer.
We've been going on so long.
I know. Easily done. I won't keep you very long on this one. I presume you've all read this. I'll just note that we have previously had a financial strategy task and finish group, but it hasn't met for quite some time. I'm mindful really that lately our financial scrutiny has been restricted to sort of two avenues really. First, quarterly budget monitoring, and secondly, ad hoc budget monitoring within thematic committees. And having received an incredibly useful guide from the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountability, raises a real gap at the moment in terms of our financial scrutiny, which is taking a longer term view. But also, what we're not really doing is marrying strategic objectives to finance. So we're not asking the council and its officers how it intends to fund its ambitions, and as you know, but restricting ourselves really just to this sort of rather short-term work. So the proposal is this task and finish group will be a rolling task and finish group, which is something I'm not usually keen on, but it seems appropriate on this occasion to take that longer term view. And because it is taking a longer term view, to me there seems to be little merit in setting this up much before the elections. It would only meet once, if not twice. And as James Alton will no doubt point out, when it comes to budget setting, although this year is unusual, ordinarily very little is happening at the moment. So the action really starts later in the year. So at the moment, I'm just seeking agreement to set up this group, and I won't really take any action other than sort of preparing paperwork for it until it's clear to me actually who has a seat on council, and at that point we can start recruiting to it. And I'll probably bring a refined report to performance management just for a further check on this. So I'll leave it there. There's a draft terms of reference for the group and a short report that outlines the approach to this work. James is here as well, so I invite comment.
Okay, I'm quite happy with what you're suggesting, Daniel. Can everybody else hear? Have I frozen out? Or can you hear me, Daniel?
I can hear you, Chair.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, fine. That's okay then. So item number 9, future work programme. If we can, work in that performance to one of our next meetings, Daniel.
Well, Chair, I mean, at the moment, I think we let's have a look. We only actually have one more meeting booked for performance management, so I can set up an additional meeting if you want to, although I would perhaps suggest that if we're looking at 6 months' time, again, that would be after the election period.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else got to say anything else, or?
There is one thing I'd like to say as well. It's just a reflection on what happened earlier in the meeting, where Councillor Evans raised the Brexit Task and Finish group. This is still very much a piece of work that belongs to this committee. Roger's quite right. The committee hasn't met the Task and Finish group hasn't met for some 18 months. And if I might say so, I think at the time it did last meet because Brexit was had become essentially a parliamentary parlour game. It was really just receiving briefings. So whilst we can resurrect the group, I would question the merit of just blindly raising the group, and I would suggest, and this is only a suggestion, that this work be subsumed into the work of this committee, to take that sort of rather than in a task and finish group with all the administration that comes up with that, from what I can see, scant reward when there are other member groups and task and finish groups carrying out this work. So that would be my suggestion, is that A, we disband the Brexit task and finish group, and B, we base the work that's happening within the council and in response to Brexit firmly within the work programme of this committee for it to be publicly accountable.
Okay, that sounds all right to me. Roger wants to say something.
Thank
Roger,
you, Chairman. Yeah, I can go with that. But could we add it to the next meeting? And maybe Councillor Gwilym Butler, who's a cabinet member, could just give a brief update on where we are, because we got elections and all the rest of it, but just so that people have an opportunity of hearing from Shropshire Council in a public forum. So if it can be added, I'm not asking for a lot of work. Maybe Councillor Butler can come along, give a brief update where we are and what we're doing. He did make reference to it a little bit at the cabinet meeting, but I think then that wouldn't. Yeah, let's take it into here and let the new committees sort it out from there on.
Okay, I'm happy with that, Roger. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that happen then, Chair.
Okay, so that's it, I think. Thank you so much. Can you go off? Can you go off live now, please? Because I just wanted to just talk to Roger off. You know, if we can stop. Amanda, have you taken us? We finished the meeting now? Do you want to take us off live and just leave the members there? Show participants: Amanda, Daniel, Graham White. Amanda, are you there? Could you take us off live now, please?